668 Facing Heaven's Will, 2. 668 Facing Heaven's Will, 2. Among them, there were more than 3,000 people at the Tao realm level. There were nearly 100 people above the Tao realm, and there were 4 people who had reached the half-step Grand Primordium realm. With such a population and quality of cultivation, how could there only be 3,000 people left who could hear his voice? His voice just now also contained dharmic powers. Everyone in the secret world would have heard his voice, but now, only 3 people responded to it. He could basically confirm that something had happened in this secret world. At this moment, Kui Hung received a message that returned with his voice. Help. Senior, please save us. It was a distress message. Kui Hung's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not enter immediately. Instead, he carefully checked the situation of this message. After confirming that the source of this voice was indeed very weak, his eyes suffused with a golden light. He immediately saw a spatial vortex hidden in the void in front of him. This was the entrance to the secret world. His gaze that contained the power of the spiritual golden eyes quickly passed through this entrance and saw the situation in the secret world. Just as Tian Qing had described, after entering this entrance, there was an ancient palace built with huge rocks. 12 bronze statues stood on both sides of the palace, forming a long passageway. Box and com. However, 9 of the 12 bronze statues were already incomplete. Some had lost their heads, some had lost their arms, some had lost half of their bodies, and some were only left with their foundations. Beside them were scattered fragments. The scene was extremely tragic. At the end of this passageway lay 2 tall giants. They were dressed in armor and holding spears. Their bodies emitted extremely powerful nomological power, but they no longer had any vitality. Their souls were completely destroyed and they became 2 corpses. From the nomological power emitted by these 2 corpses, they should have been at the middle 3 Tao realms when they were alive. In the vast world outside, they could already be hailed as ancestors. Now, they had become cold corpses, lying here quietly and motionless. 9 nether demonic chi? Kui Hung raised his eyebrows slightly, and his gaze became even deeper. He discovered a faint 9 nether demonic chi on the 2 corpses. This secret world had been invaded by the 9 nether. Then, he looked past the palace and continued forward. Then, he saw that the sky of this secret world had all turned purple-black. There were also layers of faint blue flames floating in the sky like clouds. Deep cracks were everywhere on the ground, interweaving into a spiderweb. Thick red flames surged out from it, and thick smoke rose everywhere. It was as if the end of the world had arrived and the entire world was about to be destroyed. Further forward was a vast and endless sea of earth fire. Countless monsters emitting 9 nether demonic chi floated within it. They were all strange-looking and completely different from ordinary living beings. Even though he was just looking at the situation with his eyes, Kui Hung could feel the chaos and violence in this hidden world. The world was filled with an aura of destruction, as if it could shatter at any moment. Seeing this situation, he quickly searched for the remaining 3,000 people. These people were scattered into 2 settlements, all hiding in large arrays that could hide their auras. Everyone's mental state was extremely poor, and their eyes were filled with despair. That was why only 1 person responded to his voice. Is it really an invasion by the 9 nether? Kui Hung had already seen everything about this secret world clearly. The entire world had basically fallen, and not even an inch of intact land could be found. The reason why these 3,000 people could survive was because the ancient King Supreme treasures they possessed could be used to hide themselves. What about the other 9 ancient King Supreme treasures? Kui Hung was a little puzzled, but he quickly thought of the 9 destroyed statues. Perhaps the 9 ancient King Supreme treasures had already been snatched away. After realizing this, he hesitated for a moment before entering the spatial vortex in front of him and arriving in this secret world. As soon as he entered, he felt an extremely strong 9 nether demonic chi, as if the heaven-earth origin chi of this world had been replaced by the 9 nether demonic chi. Ordinary great Tao laws had also become the power of the 9 nether that was filled with negative energy. It's strange that I didn't find a single 9 nether god fiend even though there's such a dense 9 nether demonic chi. Kui Hung frowned slightly. Just now, he had used his spiritual golden eyes to look at this world, but he only discovered those monsters with dense 9-nether demonic chi, but he did not discover the source of this 9-nether demonic chi. This situation was a little strange. However, in order to obtain the ancient King's supreme treasures here, he still had to come in and investigate. He quickly arrived at the place where the person who had responded to him earlier. This was a huge mountain that had completely collapsed. It was surrounded by dense cracks in the ground. The sky was filled with thick smoke and faint blue flames. The heaven-earth origin chi and great Tao laws were also contaminated. It was difficult for people with insufficient cultivation realms to even live normally in such an environment. At this moment, a light blue light curtain enveloped more than 1,000 people, hiding in the ruins of the huge mountain. The light curtain covered their figures and fused with the outside world. At the same time, it hid their auras, making it impossible to detect them. However, all of this could not be hidden under Kui Heng's spiritual golden eyes and divine sense. Everyone's situation was clearly displayed in his eyes. "What happened here?" Kui Heng asked. His voice was calm, but very clear, so that the more than 1,000 people here could hear him. As soon as his voice appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of these people. One of the women slowly stood up. She saw Kui Heng outside through the light screen, and her expression was slightly conflicted. In the end, she seemed to have made up her mind and finally rushed out of the light curtain. She bowed to Kui Heng extremely respectfully and said, "Senior, are you Kui Heng, who just said that you wanted to visit here?" "That's right, it's me." Kui Heng nodded slightly and stared at this woman. He smiled and said, "Can you tell me what happened here?" That's great, that's great. With an expert like Senior around, we can be saved." The woman seemed to have heard great news and said to Kui Heng, "Senior, can we talk in private? The outside world is filled with 9-nether demonic chi, and we might be noticed by the 9-nether god fiends. It's not safe." As she spoke, she pointed at the light curtain that concealed their aura. "Sure." Kui Heng nodded slightly and said, "In that case, let's talk in detail inside." "Thank you, Senior." The woman was overjoyed. As she descended, she said, "Senior, please follow me." "All right." Kui Heng smiled kindly. The two of them quickly entered the light curtain. The woman landed with her back facing him, and the people inside also had their backs facing him strangely. The moment Kui Heng landed, the young woman and the 1,000-odd people inside all turned around in unison. They had all become the same face and had the same expression. Their eyes were fixed on Kui Heng. The scene was a little terrifying. The light curtain that was originally used to hide them had also become a spatial barrier array. Clearly, it wanted to seal all of Kui Heng's actions. Kui Heng seemed to have expected this. He looked at the young woman with a faint smile and said, "As the will of the universe, are your methods so simple? I just want to find a suitable place to talk with you. Moreover, you came here yourself." The deference on the young woman's face had long since disappeared, replaced by a faint smile and a hint of amusement. "This place is just right. You should know very well that it's inconvenient for me to act too obviously. Know very well Maya *s." Kui Heng sneered. "Where's the yellow-scarved strongman?" 669 The power of the return to Void Realm, unbelievable power. 669 The power of the return to Void Realm, unbelievable power. A dark golden giant-like yellow-scarved strongman appeared out of thin air. After he appeared, he bowed to Kui Heng and said respectfully, "Greetings, Master Immortal." Kui Heng pointed at the young woman opposite him and said in a low voice, "Kill her." He did not care about the goal of Heaven's will. He only knew that Heaven's will had deliberately lured him here and even used the ancient King's supreme treasures to set up a huge array to imprison him here. That was enough. After the yellow-scarved strongman received Kui Heng's order, he immediately nodded and said, "Yes, Master Immortal." Then, he looked at the young woman and raised his hand to punch forward, accurately striking her. This punch was not fancy at all. It did not even contain the power of the great Tao laws. The young woman who was punched stood on the spot and was not injured at all. It was as if it was just an ordinary punch, and it was an extremely light punch. However, in reality, The expression of the young woman who was filled with confidence just now changed drastically. Her expression froze completely, and her eyes widened, as if she had seen something unbelievable. Why can't I dodge this punch? There's clearly nothing magical about it, but I actually didn't realize that this punch would come. How is this possible? The young woman, or rather, the heaven's will, was horrified. He knew very well what this situation meant. Boxer of L. Com. This huge man who addressed Kui Heng as Master Immortal and looked like a servant clearly had an extremely powerful cultivation realm that far exceeded his current self. Moreover, such an expert actually listened to Kui Heng. It did not make sense for someone with a high cultivation realm to be so respectful to someone with a low cultivation realm, unless the background of this lower cultivator was incomparably shocking and terrifying. Who exactly is he? What's his identity? He actually has such an expert as his Tao protector. The young woman's mind was filled with thoughts, but this was the last thought he had in this body. The moment the young woman was punched by the yellow-scarved strongman, a faint human-shaped outline flew out from her back and floated in the air. This was the heaven's will that had possessed her body. It was directly punched out. At the same time, the heaven's will in the bodies of the other 1,000 people was also beaten out. They all floated in the air. They attracted and fused with each other, and in the blink of an eye, they gathered into the phantom of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's phantom seemed to want to move, but then he realized that he could not move at all, as if he was imprisoned by an invisible force. Fellow Daoist, I don't have any ill intentions. The middle-aged man looked at Kui Heng and shouted, wanting to explain. He knew very well that there was no point in pleading with the yellow-scarved strongman. The one who really made the decision here was Kui Heng. However, Kui Heng turned a deaf ear to this. His expression was indifferent, as if he hadn't heard anything at all. Seeing this, the middle-aged man knew that he only had one path left. That was to fight the enemy. Although he was only in the soul state now and his cultivation had long been stripped away, and he had been demoted to this point, unable to mobilize much power, he was still the heaven's will of this universe. If he tried his best, he could still do many things. Hence, with a thought, he directly used the power of heaven's will. This immediately pried open the great Tao laws of the universe. Countless laws changed, and countless stars trembled. With the location of the secret world as the core, the surrounding billions of light-years moved. Whether it was the planets, stars, nebula, interstellar dust, red giants, white dwarfs, black holes, or so on, they all split off an invisible force and entered the void, gathering towards an unknown place. At the same time, these powers fused into the middle-aged man's soul, instantly shaping an incomparably powerful body for him. After possessing a body, the aura and pressure on this middle-aged man's body suddenly soared, and he actually became even stronger than before, causing this hidden world to tremble. Don't think that just because you have a Tao protector of such a realm, that I can only wait for death. The middle-aged man seemed to have some confidence as well. His gaze turned cold as he stared at Kui Heng and shouted sternly, "No matter what, I'm the will of this universe now. How can you kill me just like that?" Before he could finish his sentence, the power of millions of laws surged out of his body. They came from different stars and even the sea of stars. Now, they had all become a part of his power. The strength of this power was extremely terrifying. It was equivalent to mobilizing countless stars within a radius of billions of light years. Under normal circumstances, only heaven's will could do such a thing. This was also one of the reasons why no one could successfully resist heaven's will. Even an ancient king who had stepped into the grand primordium realm would only be destined to fail in the face of such power. With this incomparably powerful force, the middle-aged man began to try to break free from the yellow-scarved strongman's shackles. An incomparably bright and dazzling light was released from his body, attacking the invisible force that imprisoned him. The yellow-scarved strongman was indifferent to this and had no intention of stopping the middle-aged man. Kui Heng observed quietly at the side, his eyes suffused with a faint golden light. He was using his spiritual golden eyes to observe the imprisonment power used by the yellow-scarved strongman. Just now, he did not feel any traces of dharmic powers being used by the yellow-scarved strongman. 670 The power of the return to Void Realm, unbelievable power, 2. 670 The power of the return to Void Realm, unbelievable power, 2. Under the gaze of the spiritual golden eyes, Kui Heng realized that there was actually no imprisonment power around Heaven's will. Everything was completely in a normal nomological state and had not changed at all. However, Heaven's will was unable to move. No matter how he struggled, he could not move. How did he do this? Kui Heng frowned and said in his heart, this is somewhat similar to the characteristics of a soul formation cultivator distorting laws. It forcefully changes a certain law and distorts this law that imprisons people with invisible power. But the yellow-scarved strongman's methods are clearly not like this. There are no traces of changes in the surrounding laws, nor are they interfered with by any dharmic powers. How did he do this? Is this a characteristic of the return to Void Realm? This was the first time he had seen an early-stage return to Void Realm cultivator attack. Such a mysterious technique surprised him. He could not help but sigh. The gap between cultivators of different realms was really huge. He was already at the peak soul formation realm and was about to step onto the path to the return to Void Realm. But he could not even understand how an early-stage return to Void Realm cultivator attacked and why there was such an effect after attacking. It was too ridiculous. At this moment, the middle-aged man's impact on the imprisonment power was still continuing. That incomparably dazzling light was released endlessly, illuminating the entire secret world. The release of these lights was not stopped by any so-called imprisonment power. They all rushed out unobstructed. They quickly spread to every corner of this secret world, actually killing all the 9 nether demons and dispersing all the 9 nether demonic chi. These lights were like the light of salvation, reflected in the eyes of every living ancient king's descendants. Boxer Novel. Com. At this moment, they looked at the sky in a daze, as if their entire minds were immersed in it. Even the half-step ancient kings who had severed their Tao self was already intoxicated. He was too powerful. What kind of power was this? It was actually so powerful. Had the ancestor of the ancient kings reappeared? No. Even the ancestors of the ancient kings were probably not so powerful. This reignited a trace of hope in the people who were already almost in despair. They looked at the sky hopefully. However, the middle-aged man looked terrified. At this moment, he could no longer understand his current situation. Just now, he had confidently attacked the power that imprisoned him, but he realized that it was useless. It was not that the impact was ineffective, but that nothing had been affected by this power. The shackles on him did not weaken at all. The power of the stars that had been mobilized from a radius of billions of light-years was actually all for naught. It was simply unbelievable. How can such a thing happen? I'm not imprisoned by any power. But why can't I move at all? The middle-aged man was terrified, unable to understand this situation no matter what. He forced himself to calm down and looked at the yellow-scarved strongman. Who exactly are you? Where did you come from? And why did you descend into this universe? What exactly do you want to do? At this moment, in the eyes of the Heaven's will, Kui Heng and the yellow-scarved strongman must have come here with special goals. Otherwise, why would an expert of such a realm come to such a universe? If he could investigate their goals clearly, he might be able to make amends and restore his former position as an immortal king. The yellow-scarved strongman's expression was as dignified and indifferent as ever. He looked at Heaven's will and said in a low voice, I'm under the orders of Master Immortal to kill you. Dream on. I was once an immortal king too. The middle-aged man finally exploded. The essence of his soul, which was once an immortal king, suddenly revealed endless spiritual light. Not only was this secret world illuminated, but even the starry skies of the universe outside were illuminated by his spiritual light. Facing an incomprehensible expert like the yellow-scarved strongman, he no longer planned to hold back. He wanted to escape with all his might. As long as he reported the news of the appearance of such an expert in this universe, he might be pardoned. He would fight to the death. It was worth it. At the same time that he manifested endless spiritual light, 11 pillars of light of different colors lit up from various places in this secret world and shot into the sky. In these pillars of light, the outlines of various weapons could be vaguely seen. There were sabers, swords, spears, axes, cauldrons, towers, bells, and so on. They were all treasures that contained a large amount of origin power. It was the 11 ancient kings' supreme treasures left behind by the 11 ancient kings' descendants in this secret world. Now, they were all mobilized by this heaven's will and gathered around him, becoming a part of his power. Such a huge amount of origin great Tao power was activated at the same time. To the entire universe, it was something that had never happened before. After all, there was no time when there were 11 ancient kings in 5.6 billion years of reincarnation. Moreover, it was the heaven's will of this universe that had activated so much of the origin great Tao. He relied on a huge amount of the power of the origin great Tao to forcefully increase the limit of his heaven's will authority. This directly caused most of the universe to tremble violently. Countless trillions of star seas shook, and endless power began to gather towards the heaven's will. A crazy smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face. He was already prepared to escape with his true spirit. The power of most of the universe was just to cover for his escape. Unfortunately, all of this was meaningless to the yellow-scarfed strongman. The moment the middle-aged man was about to escape with his true spirit, the yellow-scarfed strongman only raised his hand and pointed lightly. His true spirit froze on the spot and he was completely unable to move. The origin great Tao power of the 11 ancient kings' supreme treasures was also restrained. They became dim, as if they had become scrap metal that fell from the sky. The power turbulence in most of the universe actually stopped abruptly just like that. There was no afterword, nor was there any disaster. It was calmed down by the yellow-scarfed strongman's gentle finger. At the same time, the heavens will suddenly felt that his entire body was torn apart. His body, which was originally formed by starlight, collapsed into nothingness, and his power completely dissipated. Even his remaining soul began to disintegrate. This disintegration was extremely fast and sudden. He did not even have the chance to react before most of it disintegrated. At this moment, Kui Heng suddenly said, "Can you retain his memories?" "Yes." The yellow-scarfed strongman nodded and immediately changed his methods. He no longer disintegrated the middle-aged man's soul. Instead, he stretched out his palm and patted forward gently. Due to the transformation of his ability, the middle-aged man had the time to think and try to escape with his true spirit. However, in the next moment, he felt his spiritual perception become blurry. His incomplete soul and true spirit were compressed by an inexplicable force and became flat and thin, turning into a thin paper doll. At the same time, everything he had experienced in his life turned into light and shadows that flashed through his blurry consciousness, like pictures. These paintings were also thin paper and looked very exquisite. In the end, this heavens will actually turned into countless layers of paper that formed a book that emitted a faint light and landed in the yellow-scarfed strongman's palm. 3 words were written on the cover of the book. Legend of Haojuan. In just an instant, such an existence as the will of the universe had actually become a book that recorded all his life experiences. Even Kui Heng could not understand such a situation. Looking at the book, he even felt his scalp tingle. Return to Void Realm. Was this the power of the Return to Void Realm? Then, the yellow-scarfed strongman held the book with both hands and handed it to Kui Heng. He said respectfully, "Master Immortal, please take a look." 671 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End. 671 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End. An existence that was once an immortal king had now become a book, lying quietly in the palm of the yellow-scarfed strongman. Such an ability was really beyond Kui Heng's imagination, and he could not understand it at all. Extreme shock filled his heart, making him silent for a long time. He did not even raise his hand to take the book. After a while, Kui Heng came back to his senses and exhaled lightly. He took the book from the yellow-scarfed strongman and nodded. "Not bad. Thank you, Master Immortal." The yellow-scarfed strongman was still respectful. He did not have any self-awareness, but he had an established interaction plan. When praised, he would also react. "All right." Kui Heng nodded slightly, then he placed his gaze on the book called Legend of Haojuan. This recorded the life of Heaven's will. There must be a lot of secret information. There should be more than just this person's background and identity. Perhaps there would also be a detailed introduction of this universe. This way, there was a chance to directly find the other 2 points of origin. Then, Kui Heng flipped open the book and read it carefully. The first thing he saw was the introduction of Haojuan. Haojuan was once one of the 3 immortal kings of the original world's Zhuyang Palace. He was implicated by the master of the Zhuyang Palace who'd made a serious mistake in the chaos calamity. His body was suppressed, his cultivation was stripped away, and his soul was divided into 9 parts. He was demoted to the 9 desolate border universes to serve as heaven's will. The punishment was to serve for 11 primeval eras. Boxen of L. Com. Just this introduction made Kui Heng feel that there was a lot of information. Primordial world, chaos calamity, desolate border universes, primeval era? They were all very unfamiliar concepts. Hence, he continued reading. Legend had it that countless years ago, the world was born from nothingness. At the same time, 2 peerless existences that symbolizes the beginning and end were born. The 2 of them were the source of all truth, the beginning of all illusions, the origin of everything, and also the end of everything. In the first years of the world, other than these 2 peerless existences, there were no living beings in the world. It was only after endless years that 2 supreme gods were born from the concepts of heaven and earth. Then, the concept of human was derived based on the 2 supreme existences' concept of living beings. Hence, the supreme god that symbolizes man also appeared. At this moment, countless years have passed since the appearance of the original world and the birth of the beginning and end. After the birth of the heaven, earth, and man supreme gods, those 2 peerless existences gradually stopped appearing. As time passed, the supreme gods of heaven, earth, and man became the rulers of the primordial world. However, unlike the 2 original supreme existences, the supreme gods of heaven, earth, and man were born based on their own consciousness and had strong instincts. The thoughts of the supreme god of heaven had to constantly expand, and it was the same for the supreme god of earth and the supreme god of man. Hence, the heaven's will, great Tao, laws, rules, and other concepts of the primordial world were quickly derived. As the iron law for all living beings, it also made the entire world more stable. At the same time, the earth god was constantly expanding on the physical level. Land, sea, mountains, rivers, and so on became larger and wider. This also made the primordial world grow larger and larger, and it was set to expand endlessly. In short, the supreme god of heaven's concept of expansion was to bring about stability on the level of laws. 672 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End, 2. 672 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End, 2. The 9 strongest people were above all living beings. Gradually, they were no longer satisfied with being humans and began to call themselves immortals. The 9 of them were the immortal ancestors. Moreover, in order to differentiate the original world they were in from the immeasurable universes and the worlds in the Chaos Sea, the 9 immortal ancestors named this world the primordial world. Using the once in 5.6 billion years Chaos Sea tide as a reference, they established a time unit called the Primeval Era. From then on, the era ruled by the 9 immortal ancestors started. Moreover, based on the concept of immortals, the concepts of immortal emperors, immortal kings, and immortal monarchs naturally appeared in the years after. At first, there was no uniform restriction on the use of these titles. It was relatively chaotic. After several great calamities, people finally treated these names as respectful titles for certain cultivation realms. In the past long years, the original method of humans learning the laws and exploring matter had long been standardized into specific cultivation methods and divided into different levels. In other words, the 9 heaven realms. They were heaven observation, heaven prying, heaven gazing, Dharma heaven, grotto heaven, amplify heaven, Tao heaven, heaven pass, and no heaven. Every realm was divided into smaller subrealms. Among them, the no heaven realm corresponded to immortal emperor, heaven pass corresponded to immortal king, and Tao heaven corresponded to immortal monarch. Boxen of L. immortal ancestor was an existence that surpassed the 9 heaven realms. It was not part of the 9 heaven realms. These were all situations that had evolved over countless years. In Haojuan's era, the 9 heaven realms were still the same, and there were more than 20 immortal emperors. However, there were only 7 of the former 9 immortal ancestors left. One of them had also not appeared for a long time and his fate was unknown. There were only 6 normal immortal ancestors left. This stemmed from the counterattack of the immeasurable universes in the Chaos Sea that had begun 300 primeval eras ago. After a long time, the immeasurable universes in the Chaos Sea also obtained great development and gave birth to endless living beings. Moreover, under the promotion of the legacy of the supreme gods of heaven and earth, these living beings also grasped their own cultivation methods. In other words, it was the 36 mortal, immortal, and true realms, as well as the 9 Tao realms. There were also the Tao Ascension realm, the Tao Self realm, and the Grand Primordium realm that was closer to the origin of the universe. They could truly grasp the power of the origin Great Tao and were called ancient kings. There were realms above the Grand Primordium realm, but because Haojuan's soul was only 1/9 of the original, his memories were not very complete. There was no information about realms above the Grand Primordium realm. Actually, even if one did not know the information about the realms above the Grand Primordium realm, one could tell from it that the living beings in the immeasurable universes could grasp extremely powerful strength through cultivation. Hence, the counterattack began. According to this book, every 12 to 18 primeval eras, the experts in the immeasurable universes would launch an attack on the primordial world. It was called the Boundless Chaos Universe Calamity, or simply the Chaotic Calamity. From 300 primeval eras ago to now, there have been 19 chaotic calamities. Haojuan had been implicated by his master's mistake in the previous chaotic calamity and was exiled here. However, suppressing his physical body, splitting his soul, and becoming the universe's heaven's will was actually giving him a chance to make up for his mistakes. This was essentially the primordial world's counterattack on the Chaos Sea. Using the power of an immortal king's soul to occupy the will of the universe and combining it with the Chaos Sea tide to purge the experts in this universe was a method to counterattack. On one hand, this could effectively weaken the new forces of the immeasurable universe. This was obvious. On the other hand, they could also infiltrate the origin laws of this universe through repeated purgings. As long as he completed the infiltration, he could fuse this universe into the primordial world. After the supreme gods of heaven and earth left, the primordial world lost the ability to continue expanding and developing. Devouring and fusing the universe in the Chaos Sea became the only way to develop. And there was only one time to infiltrate the source of a universe's great Tao power. That was when the ancient kings died. In the 10 primeval eras where Haojuan was exiled to this universe as heaven's will, he had wiped out a total of 35 ancient kings, and 14 ancient kings had escaped to other universes. The ancient human monarch and the lord of the immortal domains were 2 of the 14 ancient kings. The reason why Haojuan kept the descendants of the 12 ancient kings was to use the inheritance bloodline as a guide to investigate the whereabouts of the 12 ancient kings. Next, Guiheng also noticed that in the 9 primeval eras since Haojuan came to this universe as heaven's will, he had spent most of his time fighting in existence. That was the remnant incarnation of the supreme god of heaven, which was what he had said earlier about the heaven's will incarnation, Zhentian. After the supreme god of heaven transformed into the laws of the Chaos Sea, every universe or world actually contained a portion of him. This portion of heaven might awaken its self-awareness over the long years and become the true heaven's will. It was different from Haojuan, who had been used to occupy the position of heaven's will. This type of heaven's will was a part of the universe itself. Even if it had self-awareness, it would basically not take the initiative to change anything. Most of the time, its presence was extremely low. However, this heaven's will was Haojuan's greatest obstacle to completely control this universe. It was also his greatest obstacle to completely infiltrate this universe and integrate it into the primordial world. Therefore, Haojuan had to destroy the original heaven's will of this universe. In the process of fighting each other, this true heaven's will awakened an extremely strong self-awareness and sent down many incarnations who called themselves Zhentian. In order to secretly exert influence, Hao Juan targeted these Juntian everywhere. This was why Kui Heng knew about Zhu Juntian, Venerate Juntian, and the others. To this day, Hao Juan had yet to completely kill Venerate Juntian, but he had already turned into a book. 673 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End, 3. 673 Primordial World, 9 Heaven Realms, Beginning and End, 3. The reason why he ended up in such a state was because he had mistaken Kui Heng for someone who had also descended from the primordial world and wanted to stir up trouble for him. Although many forces in the primordial world faced the same enemy, they also fought with each other. It might even be a fight to the death. There were 4 or 5 forces that maintained a similar power with the Zhuyang Palace. These forces definitely did not want him, an immortal king, to succeed in making up for his mistakes in this universe. In Hao Juan's opinion, Kui Heng's actions of searching for the Origin Supreme treasures confirmed the possibility of him stirring up trouble. After all, through the Origin Supreme treasures, one could affect the Origin Great Tao. This might affect his infiltration of this universe. At first, after Hao Juan discovered Kui Heng's abnormality, he wanted to bribe him. After realizing that he could not bribe him, he planned to imprison Kui Heng first before negotiating the conditions. If it really didn't work, he would kill him. Just like that, he sought his own death. When the scene in the legend of Hao Juan was set to the scene of the yellow-scarved strongman slapping his palm, it meant that Kui Heng had already finished reading the book. Box a novel. In the end, it's only 1/9 of a soul. His memories of the primordial world are very vague. There's only a general outline and no details. Kui Heng sighed softly, feeling a little regretful. The information about the primordial world refreshed his understanding of the structure of this world, unveiling a layer of mystery. Unfortunately, there was still a thick fog behind the veil. The situation of the forces in the primordial world, the general situation of each force, the characteristics of each realm of the 9 heaven realms, and so on were all unclear. Kui Heng could only be sure that the Heaven Pass realm Hao Juan had reached was addressed as Immortal King. As for what characteristics and power it had, he did not know. Previously, the power displayed by Hao Juan's fragmented soul could not compare to a true Immortal King. After all, his body had been suppressed and his cultivation had been separated. His soul was only 1/9 of its original state, and even his memories were incomplete. Fortunately, the description of Hao Juan in this book was very detailed. After flipping through it, this universe basically had no secrets for Kui Heng, and it naturally included all the information about the point of origin. This can be considered a huge gain. The corners of Kui Heng's mouth curled up slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Then, his gaze became calm. Next, it's time to officially step onto the path to the return to Void Realm. Time to strive to truly break through to the return to Void Realm as soon as possible. There must be many experts in the primordial world. Those immortal emperors might even be equivalent to the Tao integration realm, let alone the immortal ancestors. Moreover, the Hao Juan I let the yellow-scarved strongman kill this time is only 1/9 of his soul. The other 8 parts of his soul might sense it. I have to hurry. At the same time that Hao Juan was compressed into a book by the yellow-scarved strongman with the power of the return to Void Realm, his remaining 8 souls immediately sensed it. A portion of me died. There's actually an expert who has surpassed the Tao Heaven Realm. That's great. A portion of me has finally died. I'll report it immediately. This way, I can atone for my crimes. An expert who has surpassed the Tao Heaven Realm attacked and killed a portion of me. This is the start of a great calamity. Although these souls were scattered in different universes and could not communicate with each other, there was still a weak connection among them. As long as one portion of his soul was killed, the remaining portions would sense it. This was actually one of the reasons why he was exiled to these desolate universes as Heaven's will. It was to test if there were any experts in this universe who had surpassed the Ancient King realm. An Ancient King at the Grand Primordium realm was equivalent to a Tao Heaven Immortal in the primordial world. Although experts who had surpassed the Ancient King realm might not be comparable to the Heaven Pass realm, they still had the strength to threaten immortal kings to a certain extent. This was the most troublesome group the primordial world had to face in the great calamity of chaos. As long as he discovered them, he had to destroy them. Therefore, Haojuan's souls actually still had contact with the primordial world. After sensing that a portion of his soul had been killed, Haojun's remaining 8 soul fragments all sent a notification to the primordial world. An existence that surpassed the Tao heaven realm had appeared in the universe where Quiheng was. He also requested to send experts to kill him as soon as possible. The place in the primordial world that was in charge of receiving the notice from the Chaos Sea universe's heavens was called the Myriad Heavens Palace. There were different areas and different people in charge. As a peak Amplify Heaven Realm expert who was about to step into the Tao Heaven Realm and become an immortal monarch, Fang Jian was appointed as one of the 36 regional leaders of the Myriad Heavens Palace. A regional leader is simply put, a supervisor. He only needed to manage the person in charge of the operations of the region who would report to him. On this day, as soon as he arrived at the Myriad Heavens Palace, a district manager hurriedly came over and reported a very urgent piece of information to him. "Manager Fang, bad news." The regional person in charge said anxiously, "An expert who has surpassed the Tao Heaven Realm has appeared in the Sea universe where the remnant soul of immortal King Haojuan of Zhuyang Palace is. A portion of immortal King Haojuan's soul in that universe has been killed." "What?" Fang Jian's expression changed as he said in a low voice, "Who else knows about this?" "Only I know," the district head said hurriedly. "Don't worry, I didn't tell anyone. I came to report to you as soon as I received the news." "Very good." Fang Jian nodded and said, "Remember, don't tell anyone about this. This is a huge matter. It won't be good if the heads of the other regions snatch the credit." "I understand." The regional head nodded repeatedly. "All right, good job." Fang Jian smiled and praised, "Go, pay more attention to the information about that universe." "Yes." The regional person in charge bowed and left. After the person in charge left, the smile on Fang Jian's face disappeared. He thought to himself, "That's great. A new expert has appeared. I have to send out this news as soon as possible. I can't let this new expert be killed." 674 3 Points of Origin, Yin-Yang Seal, Life and Death. 674 3 Points of Origin, Yin-Yang Seal, Life and Death. Life origin, star origin, death origin. These 3 origin Great Tao were the core origins of this universe. They formed the point of origin and materialized into a real world. Through reading the legend of Haojuan, Quiheng finally learned the exact information about the 3 points of origin. Among them, the origin of life was the former 6 immortal domains. Now, they had shattered into countless immortal lands and were no longer complete. The origin of the stars was a huge star sea in the center of the universe. It contained countless ordinary star seas and was the origin of all the stars. It was almost a miniature universe. The origin of death was extremely mysterious. When Haojuan came to this universe to take on the role of Heaven's will, the point of origin manifested by the origin of death had already disappeared. However, some information was still left behind for reference. Legend has it that as long as one completely comprehended the great Tao of the origin of life and refined all the origin power of the great Tao of the origin of life, they could end their own life. This way, one could see the origin of death and enter it. Interesting. Quiheng couldn't help but laugh when he thought of this. He shook his head gently and said, "What is this? If you want to cultivate a divine technique, you have to commit suicide first." Box and Novelle. Legends were only legends after all. It was difficult to verify their authenticity, but he could try this step. He decided to comprehend the origin of life and the origin of stars first before searching for the origin of death. At that time, he would have already traversed a lot of distance on the path to the return to Void Realm. His perception and probing ability should have increased greatly. At that time, he might be able to directly find the origin of death. First, it's to comprehend the origin of life in the immortal lands formed by the immortal domains. I'll start with the immortal lands formed by the fragments of the high heaven immortal domains. Quiheng made a decision in his heart. At the same time, he looked at the 11 ancient king supreme treasures on the ground and thought to himself, I can also deduce high-level spells related to the Tao of Life. However, after he put away these ancient king supreme treasures, more than 10,000 people suddenly flew over from various places. These people were all ancient kings' descendants. They all bowed respectfully to Kui Heng. Ancient King Jinzhong's descendants greets exalted immortal. Ancient King Taifeng's descendants greets exalted immortal. Ancient King Shen Dao's descendants greets exalted immortal. There were a total of 11 inheritances for the ancient king's descendants, and all of them were actually alive. Then, the strongest of them walked out. This person's name was Jin Ding. He had already severed a Tao self-spirit and reached the Tao self-realm. He was ancient King Jinzhong's descendant from 4 Primeval eras ago. He was clearly elected by everyone, representing the common will of all the ancient king's descendants present. Junior would like to ask for exalted immortal's help. Jin Ding knelt on the ground with extreme respect. He lowered his head and did not dare to look directly at Kui Heng. He said with an incomparably solemn expression, Exalted immortal, please repair this world. Repair this world. Kui Heng was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then, he looked around and smiled. Even if you don't ask for help, I'll restore this world to its original state. Previously, in order to deceive Kui Heng, Hao Juan had opened a 9-nether crack here and attracted many 9-nether demons to descend. He had already destroyed this hidden world. If it was not repaired, ordinary living beings would not be able to survive in this world. Moreover, the essence of this secret world was extremely high, almost in no way inferior to the immortal lands formed by the fragments of the high heaven immortal domains. With Jin Ding's cultivation, it was impossible to repair this place. Therefore, he could only ask Kui Heng for help. Now that they had obtained Kui Heng's promise, Jin Ding and the group of ancient king's descendants behind him were overjoyed and hurriedly thanked Kui Heng. Thank you for your kindness, exalted immortal. Thank you for your kindness, exalted immortal. Amidst the thanks, Kui Heng flicked his finger gently, and dharmic powers immediately flew out from his fingertips. Some of these dharmic powers transformed into sword lights, some into saber lights, and some transformed into mountains and rivers, natural living beings. They dispersed all the 9-nether demonic chi that had gathered in this world and killed all the demonic creatures of the 9-nether that were entrenched here. Then, they reorganized the mountains and rivers and formed the world, allowing the dead living beings to revive. In the blink of an eye, this hidden world was returned to its normal state, as if it had never encountered any calamity. Jin Ding and the group of ancient king's descendants behind him watched this scene with their mouths agape. Their hearts were inexplicably shocked. Although they knew that Kui Heng was definitely very powerful. After all, his Tao protector could kill heaven's will. However, they did not expect him to be so powerful. This exalted immortal was probably not much weaker than his Tao protector. Jin Ding and the others could not help but sigh in their hearts. At the same time, they continued to bow and thank him. From beginning to end, they did not mention the ancient king's supreme treasures, nor did Kui Heng. Both sides already had a tacit understanding about this. Kui Heng left after repairing this secret world. Jin Ding and the others stood up and looked at the world that had already recovered. They could not help but heave a sigh of relief. They had survived a calamity. At the same time, they felt a little sad. Originally, their race was very prosperous, but now, they were the only ones left. It was all because of that hateful heaven's will. At this moment, a young man approached Jin Ding and asked in a low voice, Supreme Jin Ding, why don't we ask that exalted immortal for the ancient king's supreme treasures? I think that the exalted immortal is still very easy to talk to. 675 3 Points of Origin, Yin-Yang Seal, Life and Death, 2. 675 3 Points of Origin, Yin-Yang Seal, Life and Death, 2. Jin Ding was speechless. He looked at the young man and said in a low voice, You will be punished to solitary confinement in the dungeon for 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, if you can't figure out what you've done wrong, you will sit there for another 10,000 years. Ah! The young man looked stunned and his eyes widened, but he no longer had the chance to ask why. Kui Heng, who was at the peak soul formation realm, was everywhere and could exist in many places at the same time. Therefore, Kui Heng, who had left the secret world, directly went to an immortal land formed by the fragments of a high heaven immortal domain through the 6 heaven gates diagram. At the same time, countless Fakeser, Ves headed to similar immortal lands. These immortal lands were the same as the immortal land that Tianqing was in. Their essence was extremely high, and the laws of the immortal domains were extremely dense. In these immortal lands, one could comprehend the origin great Tao of life. At this moment, in the immortal land where Tianqing was, Kui Heng, who was sitting cross-legged on the top of the mountain with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes. A faint smile appeared on his lips as he thought to himself, "I've gained a lot this time. I can deduce spells now." Thinking of this, he disappeared from the spot and arrived at the Tao Palace in the Grotto Heaven. He exchanged an ancient King Supreme treasure for 100 points of origin power. Then, Kui Heng began to give orders to the system. Consume 100 points of origin power and use the high-level immortal technique, from initiate to ascension to deduce spells. Boxen of L.com. The direction of deduction is life. At this moment, his heart suddenly skipped a beat as he thought to himself, since I can see the mysteries of the origin of death if I completely comprehend the origin of life, does it mean that there's a close connection between the two? I can modify the direction of the spell. Hence, he changed the instructions. The direction of deduction is life and death. Congratulations! You have used 100 points of origin power to successfully deduce the life and death spell, Yin-Yang Seal. Yin-Yang Seal, mix yin and yang, fusing with life and death. This technique uses the great Tao of life and death as the foundation. By refining the positive and negative divine light, one can evolve all Tao that restrains and reinforces each other. It has the ability to make the universe wither, and it also has the power to create life. The moment the deduction was successful, extremely mysterious scenes appeared in front of Kui Heng. Just like when he deduced the time saber and the Tao life sword. A ball of chaotic fog appeared in his perception. This was very similar to the scene deduced by the Tao life sword, but it was very different. This time, the chaotic chi did not have the charm of starting and ending everything. Instead, it was playing the principle of reinforcing and restraining, positive and negative, and harmonizing. In this fog, Kui Heng saw the collision of yin and yang, the confrontation of life and death, the fierce battle of water and fire, and the scene of them fusing and transforming. In a daze, the chaotic chi split apart again. The yin and yang chi split into two. A white light and a black light appeared in front of Kui Heng. In the black light, he saw a universe filled with vitality and countless living beings and civilizations declining rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it was destroyed into nothingness. In the white light, he saw a lifeless universe that was about to be destroyed suddenly emit an unprecedented vitality. In the blink of an eye, countless living beings were born and countless civilizations were created, becoming unprecedentedly dazzling. Immediately after, the black and white lights fused, forming a spinning taiji diagram that was incomparably clear in front of Kui Heng. At this moment, he felt as if all the mysteries of the universe were hidden in the yin-yang taiji diagram. At the same time, he raised his right hand. The palm of his hand was dark and held the evolution of myriad forms. Sometimes, it burned with flames, sometimes it condensed into ice, sometimes it was lifeless, sometimes it was filled with vitality, and so on. There were endless changes. In the end, the phantom of a two-sided mirror condensed in his palm. One side was black, and the other was white. They were the opposite of each other, but they fused perfectly. Primordial chaos was one, and they were one. Who? Kui Heng let out a long breath and muttered, Tao begets one begets two begets three, and three begets all living beings. All living beings bear yin and embrace yang, charging towards qi as harmony. Then, he looked at his right palm and saw the phantom of the yin-yang treasure mirror spinning continuously, depicting the mysteries of yin and yang, life and death, positive and negative. The essence of this technique is even higher than the Tao life sword. It almost includes most of the spells I cultivated previously. Resurrection, 5 Thunder Heavenly Heart Technique, Heavenly Thunder Origin Magnetic Divine Light, great heavenly demon yin fire art. Even the Tao life sword can be included. This also means that my previous experience and accumulation in cultivating these spells can be completely converted into comprehension of the yin-yang seal. The cultivation of the yin-yang seal can also increase the power of these spells at the same time. This is simply a wonderful supplementary spell. However, the power of this spell is also extremely strong. With my current cultivation realm, if I mobilize my dharmic powers with all my might and shoot out a black light, I can directly sink everything within 1 billion light years into decay and destruction. As long as there's enough time, I can even cause the entire universe to decay and enter a state of silence, destroying all living beings and civilizations. I'm only at the peak soul formation realm. Hiss. Thinking of this, Kui Heng could not help but gasp. The spell deduced by the high-level immortal technique was too terrifying. It actually gave a peak soul formation cultivator the ability to bury an entire universe. However, there's still a huge difference between burying a universe and actual combat. I'm still unable to resist Hao Juan's remnant soul from before. The improvement in my cultivation realm is still the foundation. With this spell, the speed of comprehending the origin of life should increase a lot. Fang Jian has been very busy recently. As one of the 36 regional heads of the Myriad Heavens Palace, he actually did not usually have much to do. Most of the time, he only needed to come to the Myriad Heavens Palace to listen to the reports of the various regional heads under him. The reason why he suddenly became busy was because a huge incident of an ancient king resisting Heaven's will had suddenly appeared in the large region he was in charge of. Moreover, it was not from the same universe. This situation was rather troublesome. According to his past experience, there should be experts who had surpassed the Tao Heaven realm behind such resistance, or even experts comparable to the Heaven Pass realm. To the Myriad Heavens Palace, this was definitely a huge matter. As the person in charge of the large region, Fang Jian had to find out the reason for the matter and the mastermind behind it. After a long time, Fang Jian finally obtained a clue. Hence, he came to his superior, Han Sheni, one of the 4 Heaven Lords of the Myriad Heavens Palace, to report the situation. Heaven Lord, I've already found some clues about the mastermind, but I need to leave the primordial world and go to the Chaos Sea to investigate, Fang Jian said very respectfully. Go to the Chaos Sea? Han Sheni frowned slightly. He looked like a middle-aged man with slender eyebrows. He said in a low voice, your cultivation realm is still too weak. It's hard to say if you'll survive after going to the Chaos Sea. It's easier to avoid attracting attention if my cultivation is not high, Fang Jian said with a serious expression. This matter is very important. As long as there are results, it will be extremely beneficial to you, Heaven Lord. Please give me a chance to contribute. All right. After a moment of silence, Han Sheni nodded and said indifferently, since you're so determined, go. This is my warrant. It can let you go to the primordial bridge. With that, he gave a light green jade token to Fang Jian. Thank you, Heaven Lord. Fang Jian looked overjoyed and hurriedly bowed before leaving. He had to leave the primordial world as soon as possible and head to the Chaos Sea to pass the news that an expert who had surpassed the Tao Heaven realm had appeared, allowing this new expert to obtain protection and not be killed by the Myriad Heavens Palace. Although he had sealed the news as soon as he received it, there had never been an expert in the world who could hide something like this. It was impossible to completely hide the news. Sooner or later, others would find out. At that time, this new expert would be in danger. As long as he could protect this new expert, it was worth it even if his identity was exposed and he was killed. But the room didn't know. After he left, Han Sheni looked at the door and revealed a meaningful smile. That's right. It's easy to avoid attracting attention if one's cultivation is not high. I hope I wasn't wrong about you. 676 Identity exposed. Origin of life's limit. 676 Identity exposed. Origin of life's limit. After Fang Jian used the token bestowed by Han Sheni to ascend the Chaos Bridge, he immediately left the primordial world and arrived in a universe in the Chaos Sea. The heaven's will of this universe was also the fragmented soul of an immortal king. Moreover, He had already completed the infiltration of this universe and controlled all the origin Great Tao. In other words, this universe was actually completely controlled by the primordial world. It was just that it was temporarily used as a transit point to other universes and had yet to be integrated into the primordial world. In a sense, this universe actually belonged to the territory of the Myriad Heavens Palace. A grand welcoming palace was built in the primordial world of this universe. Among them, there was a permanent manager and 3 welcoming envoys. They were experts at the Amplify Heaven realm and the Grotto Heaven realm, respectively, to welcome the people who descended through the primordial chaos bridge. Therefore, after Fang Jian left the primordial world, he came to the Welcoming Heavens Palace. The head of the Welcoming Heavens Palace welcomed him with 3 envoys. He cupped his hands and bowed to Fang Jian. He smiled and said, "The head of the Welcoming Heavens Palace, Zhu Sheng, greets the envoy of the High Realm." "All right." Fang Jian nodded slightly. His attitude was cold as he asked in a low voice, "Is immortal monarch Chonghe here?" This was not the first time he had come to the Chaos Sea universe. He knew very well what kind of attitude he should have when facing these people from the Welcoming Heavens Palace. Boxen of Com. If he was too kind, he might be treated as a target by these people who wanted to curry favor with him to return to the primordial world. To Fang Jian, communicating with these people was a waste of time. Seeing Fang Jian's expression, Zhu Sheng understood his intentions. However, he did not seem to care about this. His attitude was still very good. He smiled and said, "Immortal monarch Chonghe is cultivating in his immortal palace. Special envoy, please follow me." Then, he raised his right hand and waved it gently in the void. Immediately, a light green door of light appeared. After instructing the 3 welcoming envoys to guard here, he brought Fang Jian in. This door of light had the ability to cross the void. In the next moment, they arrived in the sky of the point of origin. An incomparably huge palace floated in front of it. Fang Jian stood in front of the palace and felt a huge pressure, but his expression did not change much. After sweeping his gaze across the clouds and the ground below, he nodded at Zhu Sheng and said, "Thank you." With that, he flew into the palace and left Zhu Sheng here. Zhu Sheng's face was still smiling, but his eyes narrowed slightly. As he looked at Fang Jian's departing figure, a trace of imperceptible mockery flashed across his eyes. Then, he returned to the Welcoming Heavens Palace. As soon as he returned, he found a welcoming envoy and handed a bronze slip to this person. He said in a low voice, "Take this slip to the Myriad Heavens Palace in the primordial world to pay your respects to Supreme Venerate Han Shani." "Yes." The welcoming envoy replied and was overjoyed. He knew that he had been assigned an extremely important mission. If he completed it well, it was very likely that he would be allowed to stay in the primordial world to cultivate. The 9 heaven realms cultivation technique was ultimately created in the primordial world, so the most suitable environment for this cultivation path was still in the primordial world. Although one could also cultivate the 9 heaven realms cultivation technique in this completely controlled universe, if they wanted to achieve anything, they still had to go to the primordial world to cultivate. The welcoming envoy left the Welcoming Heavens Palace in joy and headed to the Myriad Heavens Palace in the primordial world. A smile appeared on Zhu Sheng's face as he shook his head and said, "Fang Jian, oh Fang Jian, you're courting death." After the welcoming envoy left the Welcoming Heavens Palace, he immediately went to the primordial world through a special passageway and arrived at the Myriad Heavens Palace. The bronze token in his hand was a token that could allow him to meet Han Shani, so naturally, no one would stop him. Therefore, the welcoming envoy quickly arrived in the depths of the Myriad Heavens Palace and saw Han Shani, who was sitting on a chair with a serious expression and some anger in his eyes. "I know that you're from the lower realm," Han Shani said indifferently. Yes, greetings, Supreme Venerate Shani." The welcoming envoy's aura was suppressed. He did not even dare to raise his head and knelt on the ground respectfully. "Since you're here, it means that Fang Jian really went to see Chonghe." Han Shani sighed and said, "This confirms that the 2 of them are spies." Long before this, he had determined through various signs that there were definitely spies in the Myriad Heavens Palace, and they also had reinforcements outside the primordial world. After some secret investigation, Immortal Monarch Chonghe became the biggest suspect. Although Fang Jian was also a suspect, the suspicion was not big. He still needed to be further investigated. This time, Fang Jian's eagerness to leave the primordial world attracted Han Shini's attention. He simply took this opportunity to test him and Immortal Monarch Chonghe. From the looks of it, he was right. There was something wrong with both of them. Han Shini felt that it was a pity and was a little vexed. In the end, he let out a long sigh. Why did he have to do this? Then, he stood up again and sent an order to the few regional heads outside. He said in a low voice, "Investigate the information reported by the various regions immediately, especially the large region that Fang Jian was in charge of. You have to investigate clearly. There can't be any mistakes." At this moment, Fang Jian had already arrived at the palace where Immortal Monarch Chonghe was. He bowed respectfully and said, "Disciple Fang Jian greets Immortal Chonghe." Before he could finish speaking, he felt the void around him distort. In the next moment, he realized that he had already arrived in the depths of the palace, which was the cultivation place of Immortal Monarch Chonghe. Such a prominent action made Fang Jian feel a sense of danger. 677 Identity Exposed, Origin of Life's Limit, 2. 677 Identity Exposed, Origin of Life's Limit, 2. However, he still maintained his composure on the surface. Just as he was about to continue bowing, he saw Immortal Monarch Chonghe raise his hand and interrupt him. "Leave this universe quickly without any delay." Immortal Monarch Chonghe looked incomparably anxious. He did not even give Fang Jian a chance to explain. He raised his palm and activated the array formation in the palace. Golden light surged and enveloped Fang Jian. At the same time, the jade pendant bestowed by Han Shini flew into the air and landed in Immortal Monarch Chonghe's hand. Then, he crushed it. "Immortal Monarch, what's going on?" Fang Jian shouted in shock. He did not understand what was going on at all, let alone why Immortal Monarch Chonghe was doing this. Could it be that I've already been exposed? Immortal Monarch Chonghe is helping me escape? A terrifying thought appeared in his mind. But he no longer had the time to ask. The golden lights that enveloped him had already opened a passageway to other universes, preparing to carry him out of this universe and to other universes that were not controlled by the primordial world. However, at this moment, a pressure that seemed to be able to control everything in this universe, all the great Tao, and all origins suddenly descended. Immediately after, a purple cloud descended from an endless height, revealing the outline of an incomparably majestic human figure. It blocked the path to the other universes. Heaven's will. It was also a fragment soul of an immortal king, unveils. I was really exposed. What went wrong? Fang Jian was shocked. At the same time, he felt that the power that was about to bring him to other universes was rapidly weakening and was about to completely disappear. This was Heaven's will suppressing the power of Immortal Monarch Chonghe. "Chonghe, do you know what you're doing?" Heaven's will shouted sternly. He was clearly only in the form of an outline, but two lights burst out from his eyes. One shot towards Immortal Monarch Chonghe and the other shot towards Fang Jian. These two lights contained extremely dense origin Great Tao power, instantly forming an absolute advantage. Whether it was Immortal Monarch Chonghe or Fang Jian, they were all completely suppressed and had no ability to resist at all. After all, Heaven's will was the fragment soul of an immortal king, and it had already completely infiltrated this universe. It was not something an immortal monarch could compare to. "It's over." Immortal Monarch Chonghe revealed a bitter expression and sighed. "You shouldn't have come. I've already been suspected by Han Shini. As long as you specially come to visit me, your identity will be equivalent to being exposed." Fang Jian fell into a long silence. He finally knew why Han Shini allowed him to leave the primordial world so easily. It seemed that he had been suspecting him for a long time. This time, it was just a test. He actually naively thought that he had hidden very well. Two people who don't know what's good for them. Heaven's will's eyes lit up and stared at the two of them with a fierce gaze. He snorted and said, "Han Shini will personally deal with you." As he spoke, he had already raised his palm. His 5 fingers were glowing as if he wanted to imprison the 2 of them. But at this moment, Heaven's will that was condensed from purple clouds into the outline of a human suddenly froze, as if he had been hit by some fixed movement technique and had entered a completely still state. Even the aura and pressure on his body had stopped. Immortal Monarch Chonghe and Fang Jian immediately discovered the other party's abnormality. The power that was originally suppressing them had also disappeared, causing the 2 of them to be pleasantly surprised. Hence, they did not have the time to think about the reason. They immediately rushed towards the passageway that had yet to close and escaped to another universe. It was only after the passageway used by Immortal Monarch Chonghe and Fang Jian to escape this universe completely closed and disappeared that Heaven's will managed to break out of that strange motionless state. He was inexplicably shocked. However, he quickly knew the reason for his situation just now. He gritted his teeth and looked up at the sky. Chaos Heaven's will, so you're not dead yet. Damn it. The power that the supreme gods scattered in the boundless chaos universe would evolve into Heaven's will. This Heaven's will was called the Chaos Heaven's will, and it was also the Heaven's will that naturally existed in a universe. Corresponding to it was the origin Heaven's will. It was just like Haojuan and the Heaven's will of the universe here. The soul of an immortal king would be divided and placed here to act as the will of the universe and corrode the origin of this universe. After completely succeeding, it would assume the name Origin Heaven's will. Originally, this Origin Heaven's will thought that he had completely destroyed the Chaos Heaven's will of this universe. He did not expect the other party to still be struggling at death's door and even took the opportunity to let go of 2 traitors. Damn it, damn it. Origin Heaven's will shouted angrily. In an instant, the great Tao laws of the entire universe became violent. The endless star seas and void were affected by this roar. Just this angry shout would destroy countless living beings and civilizations. At the same time, Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe had already arrived at a universe that was not controlled by the primordial world. There was not even an Origin Heaven's will here. To them, it could be considered a very safe place. Sensing the great Tao laws that were completely different from the previous universe, Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe could not help but heave a sigh of relief. They all felt as if they had survived a calamity. Fear lingered in their hearts. Who attacked just now? He could actually freeze the Origin Heaven's will, Fang Jian said in surprise. It's most likely a counterattack from the Chaos Heaven's will. Only the Chaos Heaven's will can restrain the Origin Heaven's will, Immortal Monarch Chonghe guessed. Then, he asked, did the Myriad Heaven's Palace obtain some news again that made you come to me so eagerly? On the surface, he was an immortal monarch sent to the universe by the primordial world. His duty was to supervise the operation of Heaven's will, but in reality, he was a transfer station to send news to the Chaos Sea. For example, after a spy like Fang Jian in the original world obtained the key information, he would use all kinds of legitimate reasons to meet Immortal Monarch Chonghe and complete the transmission of the news. It was precisely because Immortal Monarch Chonghe often had similar interactions with him that it attracted Han Shini's attention. That was why he probed and pursued him today. It's indeed very important. Fang Jian's expression was serious as he nodded and said, an expert who surpassed the Grand Primordium realm was born in one of the universes in the Chaos Sea and killed Immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul. What? Immortal Monarch Chonghe's eyes widened when he heard this. He hurriedly asked, who else knows about this? An expert who had surpassed the Grand Primordium realm and could even kill a fragment soul of an immortal king could definitely help with their counterattack against the primordial world. If this person could become even stronger, he would be a high-level expert from the Chaos Sea. Of course, the premise was that he was not killed by the primordial world first. Other than me, there's only one subordinate of mine in the Myriad Heaven's Palace, Fang Jian said in a low voice. However, since we've already been exposed, Han Shini should be able to obtain this news soon. If Han Shini continues to pursue and report this news and alarms the immortal kings of the Myriad Heaven's Palace, they will definitely send people to kill that new expert. In that case, we have to take action as soon as possible, Immortal Monarch Chonghe said in a low voice. Let's go find Lord Ju and ask him to send us to that universe to persuade that new expert to take refuge with us. We have to be fast. We don't have much time. We have to do it before Han Shani takes action. The speed at which he comprehended the origin of life was far faster than Kui Heng had expected. Especially after his cultivation of the yin-yang seal gradually reached an optimal state, the mysteries of the origin of life were like a test paper with a detailed answer. They were all clearly presented before his eyes. This allowed Kui Heng's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. Soon, he'd already walked a considerable distance on the path to the return to Void Realm. His strength was countless times stronger than before he stepped onto the path to the return to Void Realm. Finally, one day, all the living beings in this universe sensed something and felt that the vitality in their bodies had become unprecedentedly dense. Even those who were on the verge of death had recovered their health and even extended their lifespans. At this moment, countless Kui Hengs in different worlds opened their eyes at the same time, and boundless light bloomed. This is the limit of the origin of life. Kui Heng muttered. At the same time, his newly opened eyes ignited with golden flames. And then, he saw death. 678 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves. 678 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves. What was death? Kui Heng knew all kinds of theories about it. He had also thought about all kinds of things. But he had never faced death like now. Nirvana, emptiness, tranquility, and so on appeared in his perception. Other than that, there was only eternal darkness. Standing at the limit of the origin of life, Kui Heng saw darkness, the end of everything, and emptiness. What was the point of origin for the origin of death? It was actually death itself. After comprehending the origin of death thoroughly, not only could one see death in all living beings, but they could also see death in all matter. The stars he saw would eventually be exhausted. Star seas would collapse, everything would be destroyed, and the universe would walk step by step towards eventual destruction. It was not so much death as an end. This reminded Kui Heng of the legend of creation he had seen in the legend of Haojuan, the two supreme existences born with the original world. Boxen of L. Com beginning and end. If I'm not wrong, even if the endless universe in the Chaos Sea is already outside separated from the primordial world, it should still be under the influence of beginning and end. Death should be the evolution of the concept of end. Kui Heng pondered in his heart, and the golden flames in his eyes were incomparably bright, illuminating the universe. He sighed softly and said, I really don't know what realm the beginning and the end are. My cultivation is still far from enough. I have to completely comprehend the origin of death as soon as possible. At the same time that he saw death, Kui Heng also understood the method to comprehend the origin of death. As the origin of the manifestation of death was death itself, one could only comprehend it when death appeared. What he had to do next was to search for the death that was happening. Kui Heng slowly closed his eyes. Immediately, countless signs of life appeared in his perception. In the entire universe, he could clearly sense every corner of it. This was a divine power that Kui Heng had grasped after completely comprehending the origin of life. With this divine power, he could sense the situation of all the living beings in this universe. Whether it was their location, cultivation realm, physical state, mental state, and so on, he could observe them in detail or control them. This also meant that he could control any living being in this universe at will. Whoever was allowed to live could live. Whoever he wanted to die would die. With a thought, mortals could become ancient kings. With a thought, he could turn an ancient king into a mortal. Simply put, Kui Heng had already become the ruler of all life in this universe. Moreover, he was the only ruler. No one shared this authority of life with him. Such power is really too exaggerated. Kui Heng slowly opened his eyes and temporarily dispersed his perception. He was amazed. However, he also knew that this was just a special situation. This is because I'm the only peak soul formation cultivator here, and no one else has the authority to control the origin of life. That's why this situation happened. If someone also completely comprehends the origin of life in this universe, they can have the same authority and power as me. When there are more people like this, the power brought about by this authority will be much weaker. However, Compared to before I stepped onto the path to the return to Void Realm, my current strength is indeed much stronger. This is only after comprehending the origin of life completely. There are still 2 other origin Great Tao that I haven't comprehended. If I comprehend the mysteries of the origin of death and the origin of stars thoroughly, how powerful will I be? If I can evolve 480 million Great Tao with this as the foundation, what kind of scene will it be? With his current cultivation realm, he actually felt a little excited when he thought of this. This was really touching the ultimate level of the universe. And this was only the preparation stage before stepping into the return to Void Realm. How powerful was a true return to Void cultivator? In the end, the yellow-scarved strongman was only a guardian puppet without self-awareness. Even if it had an early-stage return to Void cultivation, its strength was probably incomparable to a true early-stage return to Void cultivator. The difference in intelligence was too great. I still have to comprehend the origin of death as soon as possible. Golden flames ignited in Kui Heng's eyes again. With his spiritual golden eyes and his perception of life, the death of the entire universe appeared in his eyes. Countless fake selves began to appear in the various places of death. Wherever famine, plague, flood, and other disasters appeared, there would be Kui Heng's fake self. Moreover, they all had the same face and wore the same clothes. When a fake self appeared in the same place many times, some folklore would be born. For example, this human was actually a calamity god who brought disaster. As long as this human appeared, endless disasters would descend. Based on these legends, Kui Heng produced a new fake self that symbolizes disaster. In addition, many of Kui Heng's fake selves often appeared at people's funerals. Gradually, they were treated as a Grim Reaper who took away souls. Hence, a new fake self was born as the Grim Reaper. Of course, in places that most people could not detect, Kui Heng's many fake selves were still observing the destruction of stars, the collapse of starseas, the shattering of matter, and other scenes related to death. Thanks to his cultivation of the yin-yang seal, he had comprehended a lot of the mysteries of life and death. Moreover, because he had already completed his comprehension of the origin of life, the concept of death had become incomparably clear. His comprehension of the origin of death was extremely fast. Observing death, comprehending death, and coming into contact with death. This was Kui Heng's way of comprehending death. 679 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves, 2. 679 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves, 2. During this process, his understanding of death quickly became clear. There was even a world formed by the concept of death that formed in his mind bit by bit. This allowed Kui Heng to understand something. After I comprehend death completely, the death of this universe should have a home. In the myriad heavens palace in the primordial world. The 4 heaven lords had already gathered, and Han Shani was among them. He looked at the person in charge of the region who was kneeling on the ground and trembling with a dark expression. After some investigation, the myriad heavens palace quickly found the information that Fang Jian had deliberately hidden. Immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul had been killed in the lower realm. In order to express their disdain for the chaos universe, the experts of the primordial world would usually call it the lower realm. According to the rules, such an important matter has to be reported not only to your immediate superior, but also to the person in charge of the area. Han Shani stared at this person and said coldly, "You even dare to forget the rules of the myriad heavens palace?" "No, I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare." The person in charge knelt on the ground, his face pressed against the ground, his entire body trembling. This is Fang Jian's order. This subordinate did not dare to disobey. At this moment, everyone in the myriad heavens palace already knew that Fang Jian was a traitor. Even their former subordinates would no longer address him respectfully. A mere Fang Jian can make you disregard the laws of the myriad heavens palace? Han Shani seemed to be even angrier. Killing intent began to appear in his eyes, and a bone-piercing coldness filled the palace. Boxer Novel. Alright, Shani, there's no need to be so angry. A heaven lord sitting at the side stood up and waved his hand gently. This is not his fault. The person in charge of the large area is enough to control everything under his jurisdiction. In my opinion, we should diminish the authority of the people in charge of the large regions, another Heaven Lord said. Otherwise, I'm afraid similar things will still happen in the future. Since we're reducing the authority of the people in charge of the large regions, shouldn't we also reduce their responsibilities as well? The Heaven Lord who had not spoken earlier sneered. Moreover, the matters of the Myriad Heavens Palace is not ours to decide with a few words. The Myriad Heavens Palace was a very huge and powerful organization. There were 7 people on the same level as the 4 Heaven Lords, and they were immortal monarchs at the peak of the Tao Heaven realm. They were only one step away from the immortal king realm. Above these top immortal monarchs were 5 vice palace masters, who were heaven pass immortal kings. At the top was naturally the palace master of the heavenly palace. He had already surpassed the level of ordinary immortal kings and reached the peak. Legend had it that he was about to touch the immortal emperor realm. Let's not talk about this anymore. Han Shini suddenly shook his head. He glanced at the regional person in charge and snorted. Get lost. There better not be a next time. He actually let the person in charge of this area go. The person in charge of the area who was kneeling on the ground and trembling immediately jolted. His entire body trembled violently, as if he had been pardoned. He hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, "Thank you, Heaven Lords." "Thank you." Then, he quickly left the palace, as if he was afraid that Han Shini would change his mind. After the person in charge left, one of the Heaven Lords chuckled and said, "Shini, you actually let him go. I thought you would kill him." "What's the use of killing him?" Han Shini said indifferently. "We might as well keep him and see if we can expose the other traitors hiding in the Myriad Heavens Palace. Someone like him is the easiest to instigate." "It does make sense." The Heaven Lord nodded and sighed softly. The immeasurable universe in the Chaos Sea does have some methods. They can actually plant spies here. It's the remnants of 2 supreme gods after all. We can't underestimate it, Han Shini said in a low voice. However, since they've provoked me, they have to pay the price. When I go to the lower realm this time, I'll be going with the power of an immortal king. Not only do I have to kill the expert who killed immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul, but I also have to destroy the civilizations of a few universes. Otherwise, it'll be difficult to appease my anger. He had already received an order from a vice palace lord to go to the lower world to settle this matter. At that time, immortal king power would descend on him and he could unleash power that truly belonged to the immortal king realm. Not only did he have to capture or kill Fang Jian and Chonghe, but he also had to kill the expert who had killed immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul. It would be best if he could annihilate the entire universe and even many other universes. It was not a simple matter to travel from the primordial world to a universe that had yet to be infiltrated by an origin heaven's will. If he was not careful, he might be discovered by the experts in the Chaos universe. Therefore, it would take Han Shini a long time to descend to the universe where Kuiheng was. It would take at least 1,000 years. To Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe, without accurate information about the universe, it was also very difficult to find the universe Kuiheng was in. It would take a long time. Although they had found Venerable Master Ju whose cultivation was comparable to an immortal king, it was impossible to accurately locate a universe with just words. They could only slowly screen through the universes based on some signs. In that case, it would most likely take about 1,000 years. Kuiheng, who was immersed in cultivation, did not know about this. He was completely engrossed in comprehending the origin of death. During this process, he gave birth to a large number of fake selves. His strength was increasing exponentially at every moment. In just 300 years, his fake selves had already reached the upper limit of 480 million. At the same time, his comprehension of the origin of death had reached the final stage. As the 480 million fake selves comprehended countless phenomena of death, Kuiheng had gradually touched the deepest mysteries and essence of death. One day, Kuiheng, who was sitting cross-legged in the starry sky with his eyes closed, suddenly opened them. 680 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves, 3. 680 Origin of Death, 480 million false selves, 3. Kuiheng's eyes were completely pitch black, without any other colors. They were filled with a sense of destruction, emptiness, and peace. It was a gaze that symbolizes death. Wherever his gaze landed, all matter, void, great Tao, laws, and so on withered and decayed, walking towards death. 4 million light-years ahead was a star sea with a diameter of more than 200,000 light-years. Kui Heng's gaze crossed the void and landed on the sky above the star sea, looking from an angle similar to an endless height. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of millions of stars went from their prime to old age. Then, they began to quickly collapse and decay, walking towards their final death. Even the space where the star sea was, it quickly decayed and turned into a dangerous place in the universe. No living being could appear here anymore. Countless civilizations in this star sea were naturally destroyed. The living beings living in it did not even know what had happened before they fell into death. However, this situation only lasted for an instant before Kui Heng retracted his gaze. Then, he raised his right hand and gently flipped his palm forward. Immediately, a white light burst out and completely enveloped the star sea, dispersing death and bringing life. The stars that had died just now had all returned to their original state, and countless dead living beings had also come back to life. In the blink of an eye, the entire star sea returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. "This is just an ordinary gaze," Kui Heng muttered. He could not help but sigh in his heart. At this realm, the birth and destruction of all living beings can be determined with a thought. It's like a dream. If I don't pay attention from time to time, it's indeed easy to lose my human nature. Box a novel. Thinking of this, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He circulated the power of the origin of life and sensed all the living beings in this universe. He intended to look for someone. A moment later, shock appeared on Kui Heng's face. "She's not here. She's actually not here. Is Chichi no longer in this universe?" Just now, he had tried to find Jiang Chichi's whereabouts. However, after searching through all the living beings in this universe, he could not find Jiang Chichi. "She really can run." Kui Heng could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. At the same time, he was a little puzzled. Is there a path to other universes in this universe? Could it be in the point of origin of the origin of stars? I can't rule out this possibility. I should complete the last step of comprehending the origin of death as soon as possible. Next, I'll go to the point of origin of the origin of stars to investigate. He had long understood the last step of comprehending the origin of death. That was to create a world as the home of death, which was the so-called underworld or hell. From the moment Kui Heng began to comprehend the origin of life to the moment he was about to complete his comprehension of the origin of death, a total of 900 years had passed. During this period of time, Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe finally found the universe Kui Heng was in with the help of venerable Master Ju and came here. However, as soon as the two of them arrived in this universe, their faces revealed shock. They hurriedly investigated the aura of the great Tao laws in this universe in detail. Death. An extremely dense aura of death actually filled the entire universe. This made the two of them look at each other, and their faces turned pale. Could it be that this universe had already been slaughtered by the immortal king of the myriad heavens palace? Immortal monarch, look, what's that? At this moment, Fang Jian exclaimed and pointed ahead. In the void of the vast universe, it was as if an incomparably vast world was being born and was about to overlap with this universe. 681 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears. 681 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears. What Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe saw was the scene of the creation of the netherworld. At this moment, Kui Heng had already completely comprehended the origin of life, and his comprehension of the origin of death was almost at its end. This allowed his cultivation to increase by an incomparably huge amount, and his essence soul became unprecedentedly powerful. His perception could already see through the universe and touch the endless chaos beyond. After touching the chaos sea, Kui Heng used his dharmic powers to guide the chaotic qi into this universe. Then, he used the power of the origin of death and life to modify them. In the end, an incomparably vast netherworld was created. On the surface, the netherworld symbolized the final destination of all death, but it actually contained the ultimate mysteries of the origin of life. In the netherworld, life and death were one and could be converted into each other. From now on, the lives of this universe would complete the samsara of life and death in the netherworld and achieve a different kind of immortal true spirit to a certain extent. In other words, reincarnation. Now, Kui Heng was sitting in the center of the new netherworld. This was a vast world with a round sky and vast land. It was filled with the aura of death, but in the deepest part of the aura of death, there was the power of life. Boxen of Com. The sky here was endless and wide. The ground was flat without any fluctuations. The borders in the distance could be seen at a glance. At the area where the sky met the earth there was the final mystery of life and death. It was the mysteries of yin and yang, positive and negative, and reincarnation. In that case, can I be considered to have established a reincarnation system for this universe? The corners of Kui Heng's mouth curled up slightly. He could not help but think of some stories he had read on Earth. In the stories, establishing reincarnation was a huge matter. Of course, the things in the stories could not all be true. However, although he had not obtained any so-called merit right now, he had obtained a huge improvement in his cultivation and was much closer to reaching the foundational standards of the high-grade return to Void Realm. Next, it's time to go to that huge universe to comprehend the origin of stars. Kui Heng's body glowed as he prepared to leave the netherworld. Before he left, he looked down at the empty netherworld and suddenly smiled. Many of the fake selves born during the process of comprehending the origin of death can come here to work and assist in the operation of the reincarnation cycle. After all, many of his fake selves had identities like the death god, the calamity god, and the burial god. It can be considered a professional counterpart to come to the netherworld to take up a post. As soon as this thought appeared in Kui Heng's mind, he began to take practical action. In the blink of an eye, countless figures appeared out of thin air in the netherworld. They were either wearing black robes that symbolize death, white robes that symbolize funerals, grey robes that symbolize calamity, and so on. They were all Kui Heng's new fake selves. Of course, only the people had come over now. The netherworld was still empty. There were no buildings or infrastructure. However, Kui Heng still followed his original plan and left the netherworld. The fake selves were true life forms with independent personalities and will. These death gods, calamity gods, burial gods, and so on would naturally build netherworld buildings that matched their authority. As time passed, this newborn netherworld would become the netherworld that truly controlled the center of reincarnation. However, just as Kui Heng left the netherworld and was about to head to the point of origin of the origin of stars, he suddenly sensed two new auras appear out of thin air in this universe. Moreover, one of them was extremely powerful. One is at the peak soul formation realm, which only has some characteristics of the late-stage soul formation realm, while the other is equivalent to a peak soul formation cultivator with 480 million fake selves. Kui Heng instantly saw through Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chongha's cultivation and thought to himself, their cultivation method seems to be different from the martial Tao. Is this the 9 heaven realms of the primordial world? One is equivalent to the 12th true world realm, and the other is equivalent to a grand primordium ancient king. What are these two doing here? Did they discover that Haojuan's fragment soul was killed here and specially came to investigate? But isn't sending these two over courting death? Logically speaking, since there was a power here that could kill immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul, in order to ensure the safety of the investigation, they should at least send an immortal king over. However, there doesn't seem to be any killing intent on them. Kui Heng looked into the starry sky and fixed his gaze on Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chongha. After sizing them up for a moment, he chose to continue heading to the point of origin of stars to comprehend it. As for these two sudden guests, there would naturally be fake selves to entertain them. To him, the most important thing now was to comprehend the origin of stars. He strived to understand the truth of this world as soon as possible, complete the path to the return to Void Realm, and complete a breakthrough in his cultivation realm. The appearance of the guests from the primordial world made Kui Heng feel extremely pressured and uneasy. In his opinion, only by breaking through to the return to void realm could he have a certain level of ability to protect himself. The process of the birth of the netherworld shocked Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe. With Fang Jian's cultivation realm, he could not understand what this scene meant. He could only look at immortal monarch Chonghe beside him and ask, "Immortal monarch, what was that just now?" In his nearly 10 million years of life, he had never seen such a scene. Even when he was in the myriad heavens palace, he had never heard of such a situation. Has someone created a world and integrated it into this universe? It was simply unbelievable and exaggerated. 682 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears, 2. 682 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears, 2. I'm not sure either. Chonghe shook his head and looked at the void in front of him in shock. He muttered, "There's actually such a mighty figure in this universe. Could this be the existence who destroyed immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul?" As an immortal monarch at the peak of the Tao Heaven realm, his knowledge could not be said to be limited. His realm could not be said to be low, and his strength could not be said to be weak. However, when he saw the huge world filled with the aura of death, he still felt his heart palpitate. This meant that a peak immortal monarch like him was insignificant in contrast to that huge world. The other party only needed to divert a trace of his power to kill him. An immortal king-level world. Immortal monarch Chonghe could not help but exclaim. Then, he shook his head and said in a low voice, "No, I'm afraid this world's essence is even stronger than ordinary immortal kings." Is this a power comparable to a top immortal king? In the primordial world, the Heaven Pass realm was called the Immortal King realm. However, because the Heaven Pass realm was actually divided into 5 small realms, and there was an extremely huge difference between each small realm, even if they were all immortal kings, their strength might be different. This naturally resulted in there being different terms of address for every level of immortal kings. Ordinary immortal kings, top immortal kings, peak immortal kings, invincible immortal kings, and existences who had already touched the immortal emperor realm and were respected as quasi-immortal emperors. The immortal kings of the myriad heavens palace were top immortal kings. In immortal monarch Chonghe's opinion, the size and pressure displayed by the netherworld was already enough to compare to a top immortal king. There was actually a top immortal king expert in this universe. According to the cultivation system in the Chaos Sea, this person should be at the peak of the Taiji realm. In the entire immeasurable universe, such experts were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns. Moreover, the conditions for breaking through to the Taiji realm were extremely harsh, and the requirements for the environment of the universe were extremely high. Boxer Novel. Com. With the strength of the great Tao laws in this universe, it did not look like it could nurture a Taiji realm expert. This made immortal monarch Chonghe feel deeply puzzled. At this moment, Fang Jian, who was at the side, was already stunned. His eyes widened as he said in disbelief, "Immortal monarch, what did you just say? This is a power comparable to a top immortal king." "That's right." Immortal monarch Chonghe nodded with a solemn expression, but he also said happily, "If I'm not wrong, this is an expert at the peak of the Taiji realm. It's really our fortune. It's actually such a powerful existence." Fang Jian could not help but sigh. With such an expert, even if the myriad heavens palace really sends experts to attack, I'm afraid they can only return empty-handed. Return empty-handed? Immortal monarch Chonghe shook his head and said with a smile, "If an ordinary immortal king descends, it's unknown if he can return alive." "Then what should we do next?" Fang Jian asked. "We'll wait," immortal monarch Chonghe replied. "With this expert's cultivation realm, we should have been discovered when we came to this universe. He will definitely let us see him." As if confirming his guess, just as he finished speaking, a door of light appeared in the void in front of him and a figure walked out. This was an old man who looked like a sage. It was Daoist Su. Just now, Kui Heng's fake self had found him and asked him to bring the 2 guests to the immortal land where Hong Fugue was. Daoist Su looked at the 2 of them. His gaze was relatively calm when he saw Fang Jian, but when he saw immortal monarch Chonghe, he could not hide his surprise. He cupped his hands and said, I'm here on Immortal Kui Heng's orders to welcome the two of you. Immortal Monarch Chonghe also cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you. Fang Jian hurriedly bowed as well. The two of them were also quite surprised. The person who came to welcome them was actually an expert at the Tao Ascension realm. In the primordial world, this was also the Tao Heaven realm. It seemed that this universe was far stronger than he had expected. At this moment, Kui Heng's fake self was already waiting in the immortal land. Peak soul formation cultivators already had traits of omnipotence, not to mention now that Kui Heng had stepped onto the path to the return to Void Realm. Naturally, he could be at the origin of Star's point of origin and in this world at the same time. While comprehending the origin of stars, it was normal for him to meet Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe simultaneously. He looked outside. Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe had already followed Daoist Su here. Looking at the approaching palace, Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe were a little nervous. They did not know what Immortal Kui Heng's attitude was and felt a little uneasy. After all, this might be an expert comparable to a top immortal king who could decide their life and death with a thought. However, when they arrived at this palace, they could not help but calm down. They actually felt like they had returned to the place where life began. It was incomparably quiet and peaceful. When they walked to the deepest part of the palace and saw the figure sitting at a high place with a smile, they felt their bodies and minds sublimate, as if they had seen the most mysterious origin in the universe. At this moment, Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe were enlightened. They knelt on the ground almost at the same time and bowed respectfully to Kui Heng. Greetings, exalted immortal. All right. Kui Heng nodded slightly and smiled. Please rise. Why are the two of you here? Thank you, exalted immortal. Immortal Monarch Chonghe stood up, his attitude still very respectful. He asked, exalted immortal, do you still remember Immortal King Haojuan? I see. Kui Heng came to a realization when he heard that. He smiled and said, his fragment soul died here and was sensed by the other fragment souls. Are you here to capture me? No, no, no. Immortal Monarch Chonghe immediately jolted and waved his hand to deny it. We came here to inform you that you had been noticed by the primordial world and wanted you to go to another universe to take refuge. We didn't expect you to already be a top immortal king. Top immortal king. 683 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears, 3. 683 Creating Reincarnation, Heavens Will Reappears, 3. Kui Heng's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. He knew very well that he had yet to truly break through to the early stage return to Void Realm and had only walked a distance on the path to the return to Void Realm. This was already the level of a top immortal king? Could it be that the immortal emperor realm was actually only equivalent to the high-grade return to Void Realm? It couldn't be. Thinking of this, Kui Heng looked at the two of them and smiled. Even if I'm a top immortal king, it doesn't mean that there's no danger. What you mean by refuge is... At this point, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He looked outside and stood up. It seems like it's too late now. Someone was chasing after you. Exalted immortal, it should be the Heaven Lord of the Myriad Heavens Palace, Han Shini, Immortal Monarch Chonghe said. He's only a peak Tao Heaven immortal like me. His equivalent to an ancient king in the boundless universe. However, there will most likely be immortal kings setting up arrangements on him to let him unleash the strength of an immortal king. Exalted immortal, you have to be more careful. All right. Kui Heng nodded. Then, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a smile, interesting. There doesn't seem to be just one person. No, this aura. The smile on his face froze, and he frowned. Is it Heaven's will? Heaven's will? Immortal Monarch Chonghe and Fang Jian were stunned. Wasn't the will of this universe Immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul? It should have been killed long ago. While Fang Jian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe were meeting with Kui Heng, Han Shini finally arrived at this universe carefully. However, when he arrived, Kui Heng had already ended his creation of the Netherworld. He had also left the Netherworld and headed to the point of origin of the origin of stars. Therefore, The universe was no longer filled with the dense aura of death and had returned to its normal state. It looked like an ordinary universe. An expert who can kill a fragment soul of an immortal king. I want to see how capable you are to actually have such gut. Boxer Novel. Han Shini stood in the starry sky and instantly locked onto all the experts who had surpassed the Tao realm in this universe. Then, he moved towards one of them. He planned to kill these people first to vent his anger. However, what Han Shini did not notice was, at the same time that he came to this universe, an existence that he could not sense had attached itself to him and descended into this world. When Han Shini went to attack the experts of this universe, this mysterious existence stayed where he was. His perception quickly spread out. The entire universe seemed to have shrunk under his perception. Soon, he located a star in a remote star region. Dark Sea Star. This mysterious existence crossed the vast void and his gaze landed in the core of the Dark Sea Star. There was an ancient palace there. He spoke slowly and muttered, Juntian Palace. 684 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist. 684 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist. In terms of the cultivation system of the immeasurable universe, there are 23 experts at the Tao Ascension realm and 12 experts at the Tao Self realm. Han Shini's perception was extremely powerful, and he quickly discovered the number of experts in this universe. They're stronger than I expected, but such a universe shouldn't be able to give birth to experts who have surpassed the Tao Heaven realm. Moreover, where is the expert who killed immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul? I can't even sense his whereabouts. Is he hiding? Actually, Kui Heng did not deliberately hide himself. However, he had already completely comprehended two origin great Taos and completely grasped these two powers. To a certain extent, he was already standing at a level higher than these two origin great Taos. With Han Shini's current cultivation at the peak of the Tao Heaven realm, even if he used a secret treasure that could detect the existence of a higher realm, it was impossible for him to detect Kui Heng's location. In that case, I can only question those people at the Tao Self realm. Han Shini quickly made a decision and teleported quickly in the void of the universe. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the location of an expert above the Tao realm. This was a world filled with the aura of the sun. The sun hung high in the sky, and the warm sunlight illuminated the ground, nourishing all living beings. Unlike ordinary worlds, this sunlight also contained extremely dense nomological power, allowing every living being illuminated by the sunlight to have power that far exceeded ordinary living beings. This was an immortal land evolved from the sixth heaven fragment of the Yang immortal domain back then, and it was also the current dojo of Jin Lingsha. Therefore, Jin Lingsha had almost absolute control over this immortal land. Under normal circumstances, no change could escape her perception. However, Han Shini's cultivation realm far exceeded hers. It was only when Han Shini arrived in front of her that she sensed him. Jin Lingsha was a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s. She wore a golden dress and had a golden bell hanging at her waist. Her entire body emitted a mature charm. She was not flustered by Han Shini's sudden arrival. She only slowly stood up and smiled. Your cultivation is far above mine. May I know why you're here? I'll ask you a question. If you answer it correctly, you can live. If you answer it wrongly, your body and soul will be destroyed. Han Shini's expression was cold as he said in a low voice, where's the person who destroyed heaven's will? Boxer Novel. I don't know. Jin Lingsha shook her head gently and smiled faintly. However, I know that you're here to court death. No matter what realm you're in or what cultivation you have, when you face him, there's only death. In the previous battles, she had personally seen the various powers Kui Heng used. It was an omnipotent power, and it was impossible for anyone to compare to it. It was too powerful. You really don't know what's good for you. Han Shini sneered. Then, he stopped asking and raised his palm to grab the top of Jin Lingsha's head. He planned to search her soul. However, at this moment, Jin Lingsha's figure disappeared from the spot without warning, as if she had never existed. Han Shini's movements immediately froze. He frowned as he looked at the place where Jin Lingsha had disappeared. His eyes narrowed slightly as he said in surprise, That power aura just now doesn't look like the Taiji realm, nor does it look like the Heaven Pass realm. Just now, when Jin Lingsha disappeared, a bolt of energy had flashed past. This power was very powerful and completely exceeded the limits of the Dao Heaven realm, but it was not any power he knew. It was very strange. This person must have a great secret. Han Shini thought to himself, this power is mysterious and powerful. I can't let him continue to become stronger. I have to kill him as soon as possible. Thinking of this, he locked onto another Dao Ascension Realm expert and instantly teleported over. This time, it was King Haoran, who was originally from the Kang Immortal Domain. However, King Haoran seemed to have sensed the danger in advance. Before Han Shini arrived, he disappeared like Jin Lingsha. They have a way to communicate with each other? Han Shini's frown deepened. In this situation, it was obvious that Jin Lingsha had informed King Haoran, giving him a chance to hide in advance. After realizing this, Han Shin sent out his perception again, but he realized that more than half of the Dao Ascension Realm experts who he had already confirmed their location had disappeared. Moreover, these people who had disappeared were all from the area with the densest nomological spirituality in this universe. The rest were basically in the desolate areas. These people should know where that person is and have made preparations in advance. Han Shini thought to himself. Then, a cold smile appeared on his face. Since you value your life so much, I don't think you'll care that all living beings die because of you. As he spoke, Han Shini's body glowed with a faint golden light. At the same time, an incomparably powerful force swept across the ground where King Haoran was, instantly killing all the living beings here. In the next moment, he returned to the place where Jin Lingsha was and directly killed all the living beings here. All of them were destroyed in body and soul. Next, Han Shini went to the worlds where the Lord Changsheng, Lord Tianzhu, the formless god, and the others were. He killed all the living beings in these worlds. He was completely unscrupulous. At this moment, in the third heaven world that Kuiheng had established, Jin Lingsha, King Haoran, Lord Tianzhu, Lord Changsheng, and the others were all here. They looked at the scene displayed on the light curtain with faces filled with anger. This third heaven world was originally established by Kuiheng to replace the venue for the banquet. 685 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist, 2. 685 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist, 2. Therefore, as members of the banquet, Jin Lingsha, King Haoran, Lord Tianzhu, and the others all had the right to enter this world at any time. Moreover, after entering this world, they could directly send messages to the other members. Hence, this place surprisingly became their refuge. However, after coming here, they were still a little uneasy, so they used the special functions of this world to keep tabs on Han Shini's current situation. However, what they saw made their eyes almost pop out. Many of the living beings killed by Han Shini were their descendants, successors, and even personal disciples. Now, their bodies and souls had been destroyed. This person will definitely be killed by immortal Kuiheng if he massacres people like this, Tianzhu Lord said in a low voice. We just have to wait quietly. Immortal Kuiheng will definitely attack. That's right. Lord Changsheng nodded at the side, but he said worriedly, I'm afraid his killing so wantonly to attract immortal Kuiheng's attention. Could it be that he really has the confidence to resist immortal Kuiheng? That's impossible. Jin Lingsha shook his head and said, You and I have seen immortal Kuiheng's strength before. He's an omnipotent existence. But this person might have come from outside our universe, King Haoran said in a low voice. The aura of power on his body is completely different from ours. He's out of place. Now, we can only hope that immortal Kuiheng can kill this person. The formless god sighed softly. Han Shini's killing continued. After killing all the living beings in the worlds of those Dao Ascension Realm experts, he turned his target to the ordinary starseas. A peak Dao Heaven Realm Immortal Monarch was equivalent to a Grand Primordium Ancient King. This was already the limit of what could be achieved in this universe. Back then, the human monarch and the lord of the immortal domains were at this level. Boxen of L. Com. Therefore, when the living beings of the ordinary starseas faced the attack of an expert like Han Shini, they had no ability to resist at all. In fact, most people did not even feel anything before they were killed by Han Shini. An incomparably powerful force spread out unscrupulously, instantly enveloping billions of stars. In the blink of an eye, countless living beings died. Such a situation naturally could not be hidden from Kui Heng's perception. While he paid attention to the movements of the Dark Sea Star's Juntian Palace, he also began to pay attention to Han Shini. His about equivalent to a peak soul formation realm cultivator with 480 million fake selves. Kui Heng thought to himself and estimated Han Shini's strength. If it was 1,000 years ago, before he stepped onto the path to the return to Void Realm, it would be relatively troublesome to face such an expert. He had to use the Sky Demon disintegration technique to increase his strength in a short period of time to resist him. However, now that he had already stepped onto the path to the return to Void Realm and had completed his comprehension of 2 origin Great Daos, his strength was already incomparable to before. Any strand of his hair could crush countless Han Shini. The reason why he did not attack immediately was because Kui Heng had discovered a strange power in Han Shini's body. This strange force was connected to an unknown place outside the universe, and it was stirring, as if it could descend at any time. Through tracing the source of this power, he could locate the unknown place outside the universe. Is this the so-called immortal king power? Kui Heng thought of the information he had mentioned to immortal monarch Chonghe earlier and was a little puzzled. But is this level of power enough to make him so fearless? He, who had always been careful, could not understand Han Shini's mentality. Could he do whatever he wanted just because he had a powerful trump card? This was courting death. Although Han Shini possessed the power of an immortal king that could descend at any time, immortal kings were also divided into several levels. Even if it was the power of a top immortal king, there were still realms like the Peak, Invincible, and quasi-immortal Emperor realms above that. Could it be that this person was not afraid of meeting an expert of a similar realm and directly killing him? Kui Heng's gaze passed through the endless void and stared at Han Shini, who was killing wantonly. He shook his head and sighed. Simply unreasonable. He casually looked at the netherworld that had just been established. At this moment, many fake selves born from the origin of death were constructing the netherworld palace. Actually, there was no need to do it so urgently. But now, there was an unexpected situation. Han Shini killed without restraint, causing countless living beings to die. After these living beings died, they all came to the netherworld. The netherworld that was originally empty suddenly became filled with people. Many death gods, nether lords, burial gods, and other fake selves also became extremely busy. They had to manage these undead. As these undead were basically innocent people who had died in vain, they did not have any intelligence after entering the netherworld. They were all muddle-headed and only had the instinct to strengthen their souls. If they did not manage this situation, there would definitely be trouble. Moreover, these undead would most likely be revived by Kui Heng in the future, so they naturally could not let them devour each other. It could be considered as letting these fake selves train in advance to familiarize themselves with their future business. These people who had taken a trip through the netherworld would become stronger and more tenacious after reviving. It could be said to be a blessing in disguise. Then, after Han Shini killed hundreds of billions of living beings in the starseas, Kui Heng's gaze finally focused. He had successfully locked onto the unknown place outside the universe. It was the primordial world. This also meant that from now on, as long as he wanted to, he could enter the primordial world at any time. He could even attack from this universe and project his power into the primordial world. Of course, the commotion caused by the method was too great, and it was very likely to alarm some supreme existences. Unless it was necessary, he would not do this. 686 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist, 3. 686 Prologue begins, Heavenly Heart Mist, 3. Even if it was just to probe that world, he planned to wait until he truly broke through to the return to Void Realm. Now, there's no need to keep you, Kui Heng muttered. At the same time, his gaze returned from the endless void and landed on Han Shini, who was killing wantonly. Han Shini, who was immersed in the slaughter, suddenly felt his entire body stiffen. His body and soul seemed to have been frozen, and he could not even move a finger. His attacking Han Shini was shocked and immediately called out, "Immortal King, please descend." In the next moment, the strange power contained in his body began to soar. It instantly increased by billions of times and quickly replaced the original power in his body. "It's indeed here." Kui Heng raised his eyebrows slightly and was about to attack from afar to suppress this immortal king power. But at this moment, the mysterious existence that had possessed Han Shini and came to this universe and headed to the Juntian Palace suddenly rushed out. Then, he broke through the void and crossed a distance of billions of light years to appear in front of Han Shini. Then, his entire body turned into a ball of white mist that enveloped Han Shini. This sudden change stunned Kui Heng. He frowned and stared at the strange white mist. He said in a low voice, "What is this?" At the same time, in the myriad heavens palace in the primordial world, a heaven-pass immortal king was floating in the void and sitting cross-legged. Green light lingered around his body, bright and dazzling. These green lights contained his immortal king power. They entered the void 3 feet away from him and disappeared, as if they had seeped into an unknown place. He was one of the 2 immortal kings of the myriad heavens palace, Cheng Yuan. However, in the understanding of most people, the myriad heavens palace only had a top immortal king called Cheng Shong. They did not know about the existence of Cheng Yuan. Boxer of L.C.O.M. This person was Cheng Shong's 12th generation grandson. After nurturing him for countless years, he finally secretly became an immortal king. This time, Cheng Shong had arranged for Han Shini to descend to the lower world. On one hand, he was indeed going to clean up the people who had killed immortal King Haojuan's fragment soul. On the other hand, he wanted Cheng Yuan to familiarize himself with the use of his immortal king power. If nothing unexpected happened, there shouldn't be any accidents. After all, it was not difficult for a true immortal king to kill someone whose strength had surpassed the Dao Heaven realm but might not be at the Heaven Pass realm. Even if that person already had the strength equivalent to an immortal king, there would not be any problems. That was because Cheng Shong was guarding Cheng Yuan the entire time. Once he discovered that the situation was wrong, he would send his power over and crush them with the power of a top immortal king. But suddenly, Cheng Yuan, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, turned pale. Strange white mist suddenly surged out of his 7 apertures, wanting to envelop his entire body. When Cheng Shong saw this, his face immediately revealed an expression of disbelief. He exclaimed in extreme shock, "Heavenly heart mist, it's the heavenly heart mist. Someone, quickly go to the Wujue Palace to report urgent news to immortal King Wujue. The heaven's will of the Chaos Sea has grasped the power left behind by the Supreme God of Heaven. Immortal King Wujue, please destroy that universe." 687 Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm. 687 Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm. The Heaven Pass realm was not just a single level. It was divided into 5 minor realms. Therefore, even if they were both immortal kings, there were still differences in realms. Immortal King Wujue was an outstanding immortal king. He was an immortal king expert who had surpassed the level of top immortal king and reached the peak immortal king realm. Such an existence could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns in the entire primordial world. He was definitely a big shot. Although the Myriad Heavens Palace was powerful and had a top immortal king, it was far from being comparable to the faction established by a peak immortal king. In fact, the Myriad Heavens Palace should be one of the subordinate organizations managed by the Wujue Palace. It was precisely because of this that when Cheng Shong, a top immortal king, discovered something he could not deal with, his first reaction was to ask for help from immortal King Wujue. While Cheng Shong sent someone to ask immortal King Wujue for help, he was also using his full strength to suppress the heavenly heart mist that surged out of Cheng Yuan's body. The power contained in this white mist was extremely strange and powerful. Even a top immortal king like Cheng Shong could only barely suppress it so that this strange white smoke would not completely corrode Cheng Yuan. After the heavenly heart mist was suppressed, Cheng Yuan, who was originally unconscious, gradually woke up. "Ancestor, What happened just now? Cheng Yuan frowned and asked, wasn't I transferring power to Han Shini? Why did I suddenly lose consciousness? However, at this point, he realized that something was wrong with his current situation. Looking at the strange white mist around him, Cheng Yuan seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed in shock, This is the heaven heart fog. Was I corroded by the heaven heart fog just now? That's right. Cheng Shong nodded and said, in the universe where Han Shini went, the heaven's will that controlled the power left behind by the supreme god of heaven has appeared. It even attacked Han Shini and corroded you with your immortal king power. Damn it. Cheng Yuan's expression became incomparably gloomy. If not for you, ancestor, I would probably have been devoured by the heaven heart mist and become nourishment for that universe for no reason. Damn it. Boxer Novell. He's going to die soon. Cheng Shong sneered. I've already sent someone to the Wujue Palace to inform immortal King Wujue about this. That universe will be destroyed soon. At that time, the heaven heart mist wrapped around your body will also dissipate. The so-called heaven heart mist was actually the power left behind by the supreme god of heaven. Legend has it that the supreme god of heaven had transformed into the laws of the boundless chaos sea, and it was also the origin of the great Tao laws of the current immeasurable universe. The will of the universe was nurtured from the great Tao laws. The source of heaven's will was actually the supreme god of heaven. Therefore, every heaven's will had a chance to return to its original state and grasp a trace of the power of the supreme god of heaven. This trace of power was the power left behind by the supreme god of heaven, and it was also called heaven's will power. Different levels of heaven's will had different levels of control over the power left behind by the supreme god of heaven. There was naturally a difference in power. The external manifestation of this power had different states. Currently, there were 3 known states of heaven's will power. Mist, light, phenomena. Among them, heaven heart mist was the most basic state, and heaven heart light was much stronger. Heaven heart phenomenon was the highest level of mastery of heaven's will power within the known range. However, this was a power left behind by the supreme god of heaven after all. Even the most basic heaven heart mist had extremely terrifying power. As long as any heavens will grasped the heaven heart mist, they would possess strength comparable to a top immortal king. Moreover, they could devour immortal king experts to strengthen the universe under their control. Of course, if that was all, it was not enough to make the experts of the primordial world feel fear. What really terrified the primordial world was the growth and indestructibility of the heavens will who grasped heaven's will power, as well as the almost terrifying infectiousness of their power. Growth refers to the fact that after a heavens will grasp the heavens will power, it could continuously become stronger even if it did nothing. A heaven's will in the heaven heart mist state only needed to hide for 1 billion years to evolve to the level of the heaven heart light. Its strength would also increase by leaps and bounds, directly reaching the level of an immortal emperor. In another 1 billion years, this heaven's will would reach the level of heaven heart phenomenon. It would grasp a large number of supreme god of heaven techniques and become an existence that surpassed the immortal emperor realm and was enough to challenge an immortal ancestor. The indestructible characteristic referred to the fact that the heaven's will that had grasped the heaven's will power was almost impossible to kill. In the state of the heaven heart mist, as long as the universe that gave birth to this heaven's will was not destroyed, it could never be killed. Even an immortal emperor could not kill it. If one reached the state of the heaven heart light, even if the universe that gave birth to this heaven's will was destroyed, it could use the will of the other universes to revive and become even harder to kill. If it reached the state of the heaven heart phenomenon, the heaven's will would completely become impossible to kill. At the very least, no heaven's will at the heaven heart phenomenon level had been killed so far. On the other hand, a few immortal ancestors in the primordial world were killed by the heaven's will. The contagious effect of their power was even more terrifying. As long as a heaven's will that grasped the heaven heart light appeared, the heaven's wills from the surrounding universes would also grasp the heaven heart mist. This would cause the number of heaven's wills that grasped the heaven's will power to rapidly expand. It could be said that these experts who had grasped the heaven's will power were the greatest source of confidence in the boundless chaos universe, and also the greatest reliance they had to counterattack their original world. Therefore, The primordial world was very firm in their attitude towards the heavens' wills that had grasped the heavens' will power. Kill. Not a single one will be spared. As long as they discovered such a heaven's will, they had to destroy the universe that the heavens will resided in as well and try their best to kill the heavens' will. They could not let the heavens will evolve to the point of mastering heaven heart light. (688) Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm, 2. 688 Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm, 2. It was true that the universe that discovered the heavens will might not be the universe that was born from the heavens' will. Even if this universe was destroyed, it might not be able to kill the heavens' will. However, to the primordial world, it was enough as long as there was a faint possibility. In any case, it was only destroying a universe in the Chaos Sea and had no effect on the primordial world. In the Wuxia Palace, the envoy sent by Cheng Shong knelt on the ground respectfully and kowtowed to a man sitting on the jade platform. Supreme Venerate Wuxia, that's what happened. Immortal King Cheng Shong requests you to take action and destroy that universe. Wuxia was a middle-aged man wearing a pure black robe, giving off an extremely deep and unfathomable feeling. After hearing the situation described by this envoy, Wuxia frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "There's actually another heaven's will that has grasped the heaven heart mist." At the same time, he was even more bewildered. In the past 10 million years, 3 heaven's wills that have grasped the heaven heart mist have appeared in succession. If this is true, it's the 4th. In such a short period of time, 4 have appeared. Isn't that too many? Could it be that a heaven's will that has grasped the heaven heart light has been born? No matter what, I should destroy this universe first. Even if I can't kill this heaven's will, I won't be blamed. Thinking of this, Immortal King Wuxia slowly walked down from the jade platform and looked down at the envoy. He said indifferently, "Get up and bring me to the Myriad Heavens Palace to see Cheng Shong." The Myriad Heavens Palace was a treasure with a special use. It could directly project the power of an immortal king into the boundless universe of the Chaos Sea. If he wanted to destroy a universe, he had to go to the Myriad Heavens Palace. At this moment, the Myriad Heavens Palace had already entered a combat state. Most of the people were gathered together to pay attention to the universe where the Heaven Heart Mist had appeared. Other than Han Shini, the 3 Heaven Lords also personally took action. They tried their best to activate the special effect of the Myriad Heavens Palace and condensed a light curtain, revealing the scene in the universe. Boxen of L. Com Han Shini floated in the starry sky. Thick white mist had already enveloped his entire body and devoured the immortal king power contained in his body. Clearly, this was the Heaven Heart Mist devouring power on immortal kings. Moreover, while devouring the power of the immortal king, it was also releasing it to strengthen this universe. Cheng Shong and Cheng Yuan were also here. When they saw this situation, they could not help but feel happy. Since this heaven's will did not preserve the power of the immortal king after devouring it and directly used it to strengthen this universe, did it mean that this was the universe he came from? After all, generally speaking, a heaven's will would only strengthen the universe he came from. This could make the Heaven Heart Mist even denser and stronger. If that was really the case, as long as they destroyed this universe, they could also kill this heaven's will that had grasped the Heaven Heart Mist. This was a great merit. At this moment, the space here distorted slightly. A figure appeared out of thin air. His gaze instantly locked onto the light curtain and he smiled. Interesting. Is he strengthening this universe? Cheng Shong immediately bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Supreme Venerate Wuxia." Cheng Yuan's body was unable to move, but he still said very respectfully, "I'm Cheng Yuan. I'm currently trapped by the Heaven Heart Mist and can't bow. Please forgive me. How difficult is that?" Wuxia smiled faintly. Then, he raised his right hand and gently flicked it at Cheng Yuan. The Heaven Heart Mist that was barely suppressed on his body instantly dissipated. There was no room for resistance at all as it directly disappeared. "Thank you, Supreme Venerate." Cheng Yuan immediately bowed extremely respectfully to Wuxia. "Supreme Venerate, the situation is urgent. Please destroy this universe and kill this heaven's will, Cheng Shong said anxiously. All right. Wuxia nodded and chuckled. Actually, I'm already making a move. It's just that with your cultivation realm, you can't tell. Ah! Cheng Shong was stunned when he heard this, and dense doubts surged in his heart. Already made a move? Was the effect actually so calm? This was to destroy a universe. He could do it so easily. The peak immortal king realm was not this powerful, right? Heh. When Wuxia saw Cheng Shong's expression, he laughed and asked, "You've never seen a peak immortal king destroy a universe?" "I've embarrassed myself in front of Supreme Venerate. I've indeed never seen it before," Cheng Shong said very sincerely. "It's my fortune to be able to see Supreme Venerate use a supreme divine power to destroy a universe. There's no need to flatter me." Immortal King Wuxia shook his head and said with a smile, "Actually, destroying a universe is indeed not difficult for a peak immortal king, but it's not as exaggerated as you think. Do you think that to destroy a universe, you need to have power comparable to or even stronger than the entire universe?" Cheng Shong fell silent when he heard this. He asked curiously, "Isn't that so?" "Of course not." Immortal King Wuxia shook his head and said, "Compared to the size of the entire universe, even a peak immortal king is far inferior. Only by taking another step forward and becoming an invincible immortal king can one possess power on par with a universe. There's actually a shortcut to destroying a universe. After breaking through to the peak immortal king realm, one will naturally comprehend it. It's not a special method. Since we happened to meet this time, there's no harm in telling you. You should know that there are many origin great Taos in a universe. The core origin great Tao will manifest as the point of origin. If you want to destroy a universe, you can start from the point of origin. 689 Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm, 3. 689 Legacy of the Supreme God of Heaven, the end of the path to the return to Void Realm, 3. Origin great Taos that manifests as the point of origin of different universes are usually different, but there's also a point that must be the same. That is, there must be an origin great Tao that represents matter that is limited to the origin. This might be the origin of 5 elements, the origin of 4 symbols, azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, the origin of particles, the origin of stars, and so on. Their essence symbolizes an existence on the material level of the universe. As long as we destroy this origin great Tao's point of origin, it will collapse, and the entire universe will collapse on the physical level. And matter is the foundation of all existence in the world. The great Tao, laws, time, space, and so on have to be reflected by matter. Once matter collapses, everything will collapse. In this way, the entire universe will fall into an unstoppable destruction. It will first turn into nothingness and return to chaos. I see. Thank you for your guidance, Supreme Venerate. Cheng Shong bowed and thanked him in extreme surprise. Then, he said, Supreme Venerate, I remember that one of the point of origin of this universe is formed from the origin of stars. That's good. Wuxia nodded and said with a smile, the point of origin formed by the origin of stars is much less mysterious than the origin of 5 elements, for symbols, and so on. It's one of the origin great Tao that's most inclined towards materialization. Such an origin great Tao turning into a point of origin will make the physical attributes of the entire universe extremely vital. When this point of origin is destroyed, the speed at which it collapses will also be faster. Speaking of which, I've destroyed such a universe before and even refined some of the power of the origin of stars. Its power is not bad. This time, I can strengthen this power. At this point, he suddenly paused and said with a smile, my immortal king power has already descended through the myriad heavens palace to the point of origin of that universe. Next, it's time to set off a big firecracker. The moment the boundless immortal king power entered this universe, Kuiheng sensed it. Then, he realized that this immortal king power was actually rushing towards the point of origin formed by the origin of stars. At this moment, all the Kuihengs stopped what they were doing and looked in the same direction. Whether it was Kuiheng, who was comprehending the origin of stars, Kuiheng, who was observing Han Shani in the immortal land and analyzing the heaven heart mist, the countless Kuihengs in the netherworld, or the countless other fake Kuihengs, they were all like this. As long as there was any abnormality with this immortal king power, all the Kuihengs would attack at the same time. Boxer Novelle. Com. However, Wuxia was still in the myriad heavens palace in the primordial world. Only his immortal king power had descended here, so it was naturally impossible for him to sense Kuiheng's gaze. Therefore, this immortal king power still arrived at the origin of stars, which was where Kuiheng was undergoing his final comprehension. As long as he completed his comprehension of the origin of the star, he would reach the end of the path of the return to Void Realm. Next, he only needed to use the 3 origin Great Daos as the foundation and evolve 480 million laws to obtain a high-grade return to Void Foundation and break through to the early stage return to Void Realm. However, at the critical moment, an inexhaustible immortal king power arrived at the point of origin formed by the origin of stars and headed straight for the core. Clearly, it wanted to wreak havoc on this point of origin. Faced with such a situation, Kuiheng attacked. Following the passageway that he had traced back through the power in Han Shani's body, his dharmic powers at the half-step return to Void Realm erupted. The mixed dharmic powers that had fused with the origins of life and death instantly sealed this passageway. This directly cut off the connection between the immortal king power and Wuxia, preventing Wuxia from continuing to project his immortal king power into this universe. However, even this portion of immortal king power that had lost assistance was extremely powerful. Although this immortal king power could no longer threaten the current Kuiheng, it was enough to destroy the point of origin formed by the origin of stars. At that time, the entire universe would face a calamity. Therefore, just as this immortal king power was rampaging through the point of origin, Kuiheng came to the core of the point of origin, preparing to destroy the invading immortal king power here. However, after the immortal king power surged in, it did not immediately start destroying everything. Instead, it emitted endless starlight and actually began to mobilize the power of the origin of stars, evolving into the scene of countless stars being born and destroyed. It was even showing the scene of the birth and development of the universe. This was simply the ultimate mystery of the origin of stars. Kuiheng was extremely surprised by this sudden situation. At this moment, the mysteries of the origin of stars were actually presented in such a strange situation in front of him and reflected in the eyes of countless him. In just a short moment, Kuiheng's comprehension of the origin of stars had reached the grand completion stage from the beginner stage. At the same time, the spell he had specially deduced for the origin of stars, the heavenly cycle star divine incantation, advanced by leaps and bounds. This led Kuiheng's comprehension of the origin of stars' great Tao to increase again. Hence, after this peak immortal king power triggered the power of the origin of stars, Kuiheng completed his comprehension of this point of origin in just a few breaths. At this point, Kuiheng had finally completed his comprehension of the 3 points of origin and understood the truth of this world. He had reached the end of the path to the return to Void Realm. In front of him was the return to Void Realm. 690 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. 690 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. At the same time that Kuiheng completed his comprehension of the origin of stars, all his fake selves sensed it, and their eyes became incomparably deep. The aura on his body suddenly rose. It was as if he had instantly sublimated to an endless height and transcended to another level. The origin of stars is the physical manifestation of this universe. It is the foundation of the existence of this universe. The origin of life is the beginning of this universe, and the origin of death is the end of this universe. Kuiheng muttered to himself and finally sighed softly. All worlds must be based on the existence of matter. All worlds can't escape the beginning and end. This is the truth of the world. With this sigh, all the Kuiheng in the universe lit up with an incomparably bright light. Billions of lights and shadows spread out from each of Kuiheng's bodies. These lights and shadows had different identities, different origins, different appearances, and different cultivation levels, but they had the same source, which was the one and only Kui Heng. At the same time, the origin great Tao of life, death, and stars transformed into countless tiny origin worlds, evolving into seemingly endless laws and principles that began to fuse with the billions of lights and shadows. He was using the three origin great Taos as the foundation to evolve 480 million laws and letting the 480 million fake selves carry these laws. Kui Heng had officially crossed the path of the return to Void Realm and broken through the limit of the half-step return to Void Realm. He began to truly break through to the return to Void Realm. There was silence in the myriad heavens palace. There was still no movement from the light curtain that revealed Kui Heng's universe. From the various states detected, this universe seemed to be very normal. There were no signs of destruction. The big fireworks mentioned by immortal King Wuxia just now did not seem to exist. Could it be that it was still developing? Everyone was puzzled. However, some people had an ominous feeling. Could it be that the ignition had failed? However, immortal King Wuxia was clearly very confident just now. Moreover, with his cultivation realm, as long as he used the right technique, it should not be too difficult to destroy this universe. How did this happen? Everyone was very puzzled. However, at this moment, neither Cheng Shong nor Cheng Yuan dared to make a sound. Everyone from the myriad heavens palace shut their mouths. They lowered their heads and held their breaths, not saying a word. The sound of immortal King Wuxia's voice vowing to set off big fireworks had yet to dissipate. The current situation was really a little awkward. It actually failed. At this moment, immortal King Wuxia suddenly spoke. He was the first to break the silence. He frowned as he looked at the light curtain, his expression filled with confusion. He had clearly projected his immortal king power into the origin power of matter in this universe. Why were there no signs of the point of origin collapsing and exploding, and the matter of the entire universe collapsing and crumbling? Could it be that the heaven's will in this universe is actually about to advance the heaven heart mist into light? That's a terrifying existence comparable to a quasi-immortal emperor. When immortal King Wuxia thought of this, his expression became a little nervous, as if he was a little uneasy. The current situation was clearly beyond his expectations. Supreme Venerate Wuxia, at this moment, Cheng Shong carefully came over and asked, "Did you discover anything?" He knew better than to ask about the big fireworks, but he also voiced his doubts. "It's nothing." Immortal King Wuxia shook his head gently. After sneering for a while, he said in a low voice, "This big firework is a little special. Looks like I have to add more firepower." As he spoke, he was about to project another ball of immortal king power into the universe's point of origin. But at this moment, the scene on the light curtain suddenly changed drastically. Countless strange purple-gold lights appeared and lit up everywhere in the universe without warning, as if an extremely powerful force was displaying its power. "What is this?" Immortal King Wuxia was shocked and immediately spread his spiritual perception to investigate this universe. Then, his expression changed drastically as he said in shock, "This aura, what kind of energy is this?" At this moment, in his perception, an extremely powerful aura was rapidly expanding in this universe. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached 1/10 of the size of the entire universe. This was only the physical size of the energy. The divine aura emitted by it was even more incomprehensible to immortal King Wuxia. Immortal, indestructible, eternal. What kind of existence is this? Even a quasi-immortal emperor doesn't have such an exaggerated aura. Immortal King Wuxia was horrified. What was happening in this universe had completely exceeded his understanding. It was simply unheard of. At this moment, Cheng Shong and Cheng Yuan, who were at the side, also sensed the powerful aura spreading in this universe. Their eyes immediately widened in disbelief. However, their cultivation realms were far inferior to immortal King Wuxia's. After the initial shock, they felt that their souls had suffered a huge impact and were directly shocked by this aura until their faces turned pale. Especially Cheng Yuan, he took a few steps back on the spot. He looked at the scene on the light curtain with his mouth agape and said in shock, "What exactly happened in this universe? It's difficult to investigate what happened there, But, immortal King Wuxia frowned and stared at the scene displayed on the light curtain. Perhaps something big is going to happen. In the universe where Kui Heng was, every corner of the universe was undergoing a tremendous change. 691 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. 2. 691 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. 2. As Kui Heng evolved the 480 million laws, all the laws in the entire universe, even the origin great Taos, were triggered, revealing countless phenomena. There were scenes of chaos surging, the creation of the primordial chaos, the birth of the universe, the destruction of the world, the cycle of life and death, the changes of the 5 elements, the starlight turning into a sea, the golden crow glorious sun, the karmic fire burning the heavens, the golden lotus of the sea of bitterness, and so on. These were all natural phenomena caused by the evolution of laws. At this moment, no matter where one was in this universe, they could clearly see these phenomena and feel the fearsome power contained in them. The appearance of these phenomena also allowed this universe to quickly expand outwards. It quickly absorbed the chaotic chi in the chaos sea and transformed it into its own body, making space, matter, laws, and so on more abundant. The size and essence of the entire universe had increased. To all living beings, this was a huge opportunity. As long as a cultivator stepped into the Tao realm, they could clearly sense the sublimation and changes of the universe and find a direction that was compatible with the laws they cultivated. They could take advantage of this sublimation to increase their cultivation. As for those living beings who had yet to step into the Tao realm, because of the sublimation and changes of the universe this time, their potential and foundation would increase, making their future cultivation path smoother and the upper limit of their innate talent higher. At the same time, in places that most people could not see, countless human figures flew or walked out of the void. They instantly scattered to every corner of the universe and began to fuse with the various phenomena. These were all Kui Heng's fake selves. They were compatible with the phenomena that spread throughout the universe, which was to say, they were fusing with the 480 million laws that Kui Heng had evolved. In the end, he could gather these fake selves that contained 480 million laws into one and reach the high-grade return to Void Realm. In the third heaven world, Jin Lingsha, Lord Changsheng, King Haoran, and the other experts above the Tao realm became incomparably excited. These phenomena were clearly caused by the power of immortal Kui Heng. With such power, no enemy would be his match. The fellow who came to provoke this universe was definitely going to die. In the immortal land, Daoist Su looked at the sky in a daze and exclaimed, "Did he break through again? How many years has it been since his last breakthrough? What kind of existence is immortal Kui Heng?" At this moment, he could not help but recall the first time he had noticed Kui Heng's breakthrough phenomenon and asked his Tao child to invite Kui Heng to the immortal heavenly Tao realm Dharma banquet. It was as if a lifetime had passed since then. Although Kui Heng was already incomparably powerful at that time, the current breakthrough phenomenon was even more exaggerated, ridiculous, and incomprehensible. He really did not know what immortal Kui Heng's limits were. Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe looked at the phenomenon in the sky in disbelief. The current situation was completely beyond their expectations. The main reason was that the power Kui Heng displayed was too powerful. Now, this mysterious phenomenon that filled the universe made it impossible for them to guess what realm Kui Heng was in and what strength he had. They could only roughly confirm that even an existence that had stepped into the peak immortal king realm could not have such exaggerated power. Could it be that immortal master Kui Heng is about to become an invincible immortal king? Immortal monarch Chonghe could not help but sigh. That's a powerhouse that's second only to a quasi-immortal emperor in the immortal king realm. Fang Jian opened his mouth and muttered, "Do we need to bring such a powerful existence to seek refuge? Take refuge?" Immortal monarch Chonghe shook his head and looked at the sky with some worry. There's no place for such a powerful existence to take refuge because there's almost no one on our side who's stronger than him. However, immortal Kui Heng's situation should still be very dangerous. If the quasi-immortal emperors or even immortal emperors of the primordial world find out about the situation here, they will probably descend and attack at all costs. Immortal Emperor? Fang Jian said in shock, then what should we do? After Immortal Kui Heng completes his breakthrough, I'll leave this place to look for Master Ju and ask for reinforcements, Immortal Monarch Chonghe said in a low voice. Although Immortal Kui Heng is powerful, he's the only powerful existence in this universe. It's still very dangerous for him to face the threat of the primordial world. Then I'll stay here and remind Immortal Kui Heng, Fang Jian said in a low voice with a firm gaze. In Human Emperor Imperial City, Hong Fugue looked at the layers of phenomena and light in the sky, his expression filled with surprise. He muttered, Teacher's cultivation has actually reached such a level. It's really unbelievable. The countless phenomena that filled the universe began to sublimate the entire universe. His cultivation realm also received an incomparably huge increase, saving him countless hard work. Although Kui Heng was already an omnipotent existence in his heart, every time he saw Kui Heng break through, he could not hide the shock in his heart. He did not know when he would be able to catch up to his teacher. Even if he could just obtain 1/10,000th of his teacher's strength, it was enough. At this moment, Wang Ren and Zhu Xian, who were standing beside him, were also dumbfounded as they looked at the phenomena in the sky. They felt that their previous choice was incomparably wise. Fortunately, they had chosen to submit, facing such a powerful existence, so what if he could barely hold on for a short period of time? In the end, they would still collapse. Only by submitting would they have a bright future, only then could they live. In the heaven realm of the Silver Disk Star Sea, Li Mingqiong, Pei Qingshu, Hui Shi, and the others were also watching the phenomena that filled the sky. At this moment, they had already sensed Kui Heng's familiar aura from these phenomena. Hence, it was very clear who was breaking through and who was shaking the world. 692 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. 3. 692 Soul Refinement, observing primordial chaos like a sea of bitterness, under the river of time, the heartless heavens are everlasting. 3. Master's cultivation realm is getting higher and higher. Li Mingqiong could not help but sigh. At this moment, she was carefully looking at the various phenomena in the sky. There was a phenomenon that symbolizes the power of the light of humanity, the lights of myriad families. It was also called the light of civilization. If she could comprehend some of the mysteries of this phenomenon, it would be enough to help her no longer have any bottlenecks before she stepped into the 12th True World realm. Pei Qingshu was also staring fixedly at the sky. He was also comprehending the mysteries contained in the phenomenon and could not help but sigh. We're too far away from Master now. That's right. Hui Shi stood at the side and nodded. He sighed softly. We're too far away. In a desolate star sea. The living beings here had already been killed by Han Shini, and Han Shini's body and soul had already been destroyed. It had all turned into nourishment for this universe. Heavens will stood in the void as a humanoid figure. His eyes stared at the omnipresent phenomena. A faint light flickered slightly, as if his thoughts were constantly spinning. Suddenly, this Heavens will laughed, and his face was filled with dense joy. Then, he cried again and clapped his hands as he laughed. Good, good, this is great. Kui Heng felt that his current state was very strange. After completing the 480 million laws and using his fake selves to carry them, he felt that he seemed to have completely transcended this universe. The fake selves replaced his position and size in the universe. He seemed to have arrived at an endless height and had a higher dimension perspective. From this perspective, he could actually look down on the entire universe. Beyond this universe was the endless chaos sea. Balls of light floated in the vast chaos sea. Each of them was a universe. It was boundless and innumerable. Is this the boundless chaos sea and the immeasurable universe? Kui Heng thought to himself. I'm only in the process of breaking through to the return to void realm and have actually transcended the universe. This is. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something and turned to look at a ball of light floating in the chaos sea. It was a universe adjacent to his universe. Just now, he could only look down from the outside and could not sense the situation inside. But now, he felt as if he had personally descended into that universe and could clearly sense everything in this universe. Whether it was the deepest origin Great Tao, the point of origin, the heaven-earth origin chi on the surface, or the natural laws, he knew everything in his heart. It's a fake self. Kui Heng understood and was a little surprised. So that's how it is. A fake self was born in another universe. After stepping into the return to void realm, my existence will no longer be limited to a single universe. Fake selves will be born in different universes. It's equivalent to existing in different universes at the same time. As time passes, my fake selves will increase indefinitely and appear in more universes. I'm everywhere, yet belong to a single point in the myriad worlds. This is one of the characteristics of the return to void realm. After understanding this, Kui Heng felt the essence of his life begin to sublimate again, and the scene he saw changed. An extremely strong light entered his eyes. This light was projected from an endless distance and floated in the middle of the endless chaos sea, illuminating the surrounding grey area. In this light, he saw countless illusory concepts, beginning, source, origin, and so on. It was as if this was the source of everything. This is the primordial world. Kui Heng instantly made a judgment. At the same time, he discovered that the boundless chaos sea and the immeasurable universe had wrapped around the primordial world tightly, preventing it from expanding outwards, completely locking down its development space. This basically matched the information he had obtained earlier. Crash. At this moment, Kui Heng suddenly heard the sound of illusory water flowing. He looked down and saw an illusory bright silver river flowing past his feet. Moreover, it had already drowned his calves and kept washing over him. In the water of the bright silver river, Kui Heng saw scenes of what had happened in the past. Some of them he knew and some that he did not, were now presented in front of him. This illusory bright silver river seemed to represent time flowing forward and washing away everything in the past. By looking at the water flow inside, one could pry into the past. The river of time, Kui Heng muttered. However, he quickly realized that the past he could pry into was very vague. This was because when the water washed past his legs, it would become distorted, so he naturally could not restore the original scene. This should be a manifestation of an illusory concept. Be it my legs or this illusory river of time, it should be like this. Kui Heng thought to himself, the essence of its meaning is that I'm still being washed away by time. Since I'm submerged in the river of time, I can't perfectly pry into the past. After understanding this, he completed the breakthrough to the return to void realm. It was also at the moment of this breakthrough that the illusory river of time under Kui Heng's perspective suddenly expanded. It actually covered the entire chaos sea and the immeasurable universe, including the primordial world. Vast bright silver river water surged from the settled past and flowed towards the uncertain future. From this perspective, Kui Heng saw that the boundless chaos sea was like mud in the river, the immeasurable universe was like a pebble in the mud, and the primordial world was like an island. Countless shadows of living beings were reflected by the river water, and their experiences from life to death were reflected in Kui Heng's eyes. There were mortals and immortals among them. Their identities and origins were different, and their life's levels were different. However, they were all struggling bitterly, and without exception, they were all flowing towards death. This illusory river that enveloped the chaos sea was like a huge sea of suffering, but there was no shore. Suddenly, Kui Heng sensed something and looked down. He could not move his feet at all when he stepped on the bottom of the river. He could only let his legs be washed by this illusory river and let time corrode them before finally dying. So I'm also in the sea of bitterness and struggling. So this is the return to void realm. Kui Heng's eyes became deep as he muttered through the sparkling river water. It transcends the universe and stands at an endless height. It has the ability to control the laws of the universe at will. It is supreme and eternal like the sky. But at this realm, one can see the truth that they don't know through the illusory river of time. Time washes away everything, and it will destroy everything. Any immortal that has not transcended the scouring of time just has an illusionary feeling of themselves. After returning to the void, there's the sea of bitterness. If the heavens are heartless, it will be everlasting. If the heavens have emotions, the heavens will age. "693 changes after the return to Void Realm, Juentian's past." 693 changes after the return to Void Realm, Juentian's past. Under the scouring of time, all living beings struggled and all living beings sank into the sea of bitterness. Even the power and divinity of a return to void cultivator would eventually age and perish. Only by transcending time and completely stepping out of the river of time could one truly achieve immortality. Kui Heng retracted his gaze from the sea of bitterness and thought to himself, to completely step out of the river of time and achieve transcendence on the level of time. This should be the cultivation goal of the return to Void Realm. However, as for how to cultivate, I can only confirm it after reading the high-level immortal technique, From Initiate to Ascension. I still have to deal with some things now. Thinking of this, he descended to the universe below and adjusted his aura to a certain extent. After Kui Heng stepped into the early stage return to Void Realm, the essence of his existence had already been sublimated to the extreme. In his normal state, he was already a higher existence than the universe. What existed in the universe could only be his fake self. Simply put, he had already become an existence that transcended the universe. What remained in the universe would only be his projection. Of course, his main body could also enter the universe, but if he entered directly, it would directly disturb the dimensional state of the entire universe, and it was very likely that the entire universe would collapse. Therefore, he needed to put on a layer of disguise to mask himself as the essence of the universe to avoid exerting influence on the universe. In this way, he could descend into the universe normally. However, the moment Kui Heng's main body descended into the universe, there was still a little turbulence. The entire universe seemed to have been stirred by an invisible force. Countless laws instantly appeared and formed, condensing into countless ribbons of light of different colors that flowed in the starry sky. A similar scene played out in every corner of the universe. This also meant that the laws of the entire universe had been stirred up by an invisible force, causing such a situation. At the same time, various phenomena appeared with the origin Great Taos. The three core origin Great Taos directly revealed their point of origin. Around Kui Heng, phenomena such as flowers falling from the sky, golden lotuses surging from the ground, and immortal music appeared. These phenomena and the many situations manifested by the laws and Great Tao seemed to be the entire universe welcoming his arrival. It was very magical. During this process, Kui Heng himself was not idle. He was carefully experiencing the changes in his current state. After all, he had only just entered the return to Void Realm. There were many things that he had to experience on his own. For example, this change in the universe. Although it looked like this universe was welcoming his arrival, the reason why these phenomena appeared was because he was too powerful and had forcefully entered this universe. Even Kui Heng, who had just stepped into the early stage return to Void Realm, was already close to a complete universe in terms of his dharmic powers and physical body. As long as some new fake selves were born, his body would surpass the level of a complete universe. With such a powerful body, when he forcefully squeezed into this universe, it was naturally inevitable that it would stir up the laws and Great Tao of the entire universe. Simply put, Kui Heng was too big. Although this universe could withstand it, it would still produce some relatively intense reactions because he had forcefully squeezed in. That was why those phenomena appeared. However, after Kui Heng entered, this universe would slowly adapt and gradually become loose and smooth. The reaction of the laws and Great Tao would gradually weaken, and the countless phenomena would naturally dissipate. When Kui Heng returned to the immortal land world in the middle of the Silver Disk Star Sea, the nomological Great Tao of this universe had already completely adapted to his entry and even began to cater to him. There were no more phenomena. Kui Heng returned to the human emperor palace as usual. Hong Fugue sensed something and immediately came out to greet him. At the same time, Daoist Su and immortal monarch Chenghe also sensed something and immediately walked out. Although Fang Jian did not sense the situation, he followed the two of them outside. "Congratulations, teacher." Your cultivation has improved again. Hong Fugue was the first to kneel in front of Kui Heng. Congratulations on your breakthrough, exalted immortal. Daoist Su, immortal monarch Chonghe, and Fang Jian followed closely behind. There's no need to be so polite. Kui Heng waved his hand gently and got everyone to stand up. His gaze landed on Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe and he smiled. What are your plans next? Fang Jian and immortal monarch Chonghe fell silent. Previously, they came here because they were worried about Kui Heng's safety and wanted to bring him to another universe to take refuge. However, from the looks of Kui Heng's breakthrough just now, they were thinking too much. Kui Heng was too powerful, so powerful that they found it unbelievable. In this way, they could not provide him a place to take refuge at all. However, immortal monarch Chonghe had already made plans before this. He cupped his hands and bowed. Exalted immortal, I plan to leave this universe and seek reinforcements. Reinforcements? Kui Heng smiled when he heard that. Do you think my current situation is still very dangerous? Yes. Immortal monarch Chonghe nodded solemnly and said, the primordial world is powerful and has a large number of quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperor experts. I'm afraid they won't let you continue to become stronger. If there's no expert comparable to an immortal emperor here, your situation will still be a little dangerous. What kind of realm is an immortal emperor? Kui Heng asked. Previously, he had learned about the vague framework of the primordial world in the legend of Haojuan. The cultivation system listed was only limited to the name and he did not understand much information. "694 changes after the return to Void Realm, Juantian's past, 2. 694 changes after the return to Void Realm, Juantian's past, 2. I only heard rumors about the power of an immortal emperor, immortal monarch Chonghe said in a low voice. It said that immortal emperors have methods to stir time. They can even cross space and time to attack. Their power is unbelievable and incomprehensible. Cross space and time to attack. Kui Heng's expression became solemn. He had just reached the realm where he could see the river of time and spy on the past. There was definitely a considerable gap to cross before he could transcend space and time to attack. He was probably no match for an immortal emperor. Since an immortal emperor is so powerful, where can you ask for help? Kui Heng asked in a low voice. This was also to investigate the situation of the immeasurable universe. There's a heavens will supreme venerate who can compete with an immortal emperor, immortal monarch Chonghe explained. A few heavens will experts who have grasped the heaven heartlight are also on our side. Then, he explained to Kui Heng what the power of heaven heart was. The strange white smoke used by the heaven's will to devour Han Shini earlier is the heaven heart mist. Kui Heng looked at the sky. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. Speak of the devil. At this moment, an extremely powerful aura descended from outside the immortal land. A pure white light crossed the void and arrived in front of Kui Heng in the blink of an eye. This aura contained extremely powerful origin power, and there were many types, as if it contained everything. It was simply like a living being nurtured from the power of the origin great Tao's. However, this origin power was a little different from the origin great Tao of this universe. It did not seem to come from the origin great Tao's of this universe itself. It seemed to have come from another universe. This huge aura quickly condensed and transformed into the appearance of a middle-aged man. He was wearing a green robe and his hair was disheveled as he slowly walked over. Daoist Su standing at the side immediately exclaimed when he saw this person's appearance. He said in shock, "Venerate Juntian?" Kui Heng's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared. He smiled and said, "Should I call you Venerate Juntian or Ju Juntian?" He had seen Tian Qing impersonating Venerate Juntian in Prince Lai's memories, and he had also seen the real Venerate Juntian in the legend of Haojuan. It was this middle-aged man. However, whether this person was Ju Juntian was actually still debatable. Anything is fine. The middle-aged man nodded and said with a sigh, Ju Juntian's identity should be the most unforgettable incarnation of mine. At this point, he paused slightly and bowed to Kui Heng. Thank you, exalted immortal, For killing Hao Jun, otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to return to this universe. Oh! Kui Heng raised his eyebrows slightly, and bright silver ripples appeared in his eyes. He saw the layers of phantoms on this middle-aged man and came to a realization. I see. Just now, he had entered the special perspective of the return to Void Realm and investigated the middle-aged man's past through his prying into the river of time. Moreover, because he already knew a lot of information about Zhu Juntian and Venerate Juntian, the shadows that could only be vaguely seen became clearly visible. Kui Heng saw all of this middle-aged man's past experiences. Juntian was indeed the original heaven's will of this universe. However, not long after he was born, Hao Jun's fragment soul was banished here and directly replaced his position, becoming the heaven's will here. As the chaos heaven's will, Juntian should have been killed, and Hao Jun had indeed done so. However, because Hao Jun only had a fragment soul and was slightly weaker, he could not annihilate Juntian completely and let a portion of Juntian escape. This portion of heaven's will left this universe and absorbed power from other universes, developing step by step. Finally, 1 billion years ago, he successfully grasped the power of Heaven Heart and condensed the Heaven Heart Mist, possessing strength equivalent to a top immortal king. This way, he had the confidence to counterattack. However, although Hao Jun was only an ordinary immortal king, there was a huge organization behind him. There was no lack of peak immortal kings and even invincible immortal kings among them. Therefore, Juntian planned to wait another 1 billion years. After the Heaven Heart Mist evolved into the Heaven Heart Light, he would have strength comparable to a quasi-immortal emperor. At that time, he could launch a counterattack. But he quickly realized that this plan wouldn't work. That was because his own strength and foundation all came from non-native universes, and he did not exist as the heaven's will in his original universe. This caused him to be unable to completely grasp the power of the Heaven Heart Mist, nor could he evolve it into a Heaven Heart Light. After 1 billion years, his Heaven Heart Mist had already reached the limit of its current level. It was only one step away from evolving into Heaven Heart Light. Juntian should have the strength equivalent to an invincible immortal king. However, in reality, he still only had the strength equivalent to a top immortal king. He had not even reached the peak immortal king level. This made Juntian understand that if he wanted to become stronger, he had to replace the foundation of his strength with the origin great Taos of his original universe. He also had to return to his original universe and snatch back the position of heaven's will. As long as he completed the replacement of his foundation, he could directly possess strength comparable to an invincible immortal king. After snatching back the position of heaven's will and spending some time to sublimate the Heaven Heart Mist into Heaven Heart Light, he would have strength comparable to a quasi-immortal emperor. For this reason, he had made many arrangements in secret. Splitting out a wisp of his soul to transform into Zhu Juntian was one of them. He planned to use the 6 Heaven Gates diagram as the foundation and gradually fuse with the origin of life. Unfortunately, just as he was about to complete the fusion, he was discovered by Hao Jun, who was the current heaven's will. He directly shattered the 6 immortal domains, causing all his efforts to be in vain. In addition, Juntian had done many other things. His goal was to replace the power in his body and finally return to his native universe to snatch back the position of heaven's will. However, they had basically all failed. Originally, Juntian was about to fall into despair, but he did not expect immortal King Hao Jun's fragment soul to be suddenly killed by Kui Heng. This made him overjoyed. He immediately began to take action and quietly possessed Han Shini, smuggling back to this universe. At this moment, Kui Heng had already seen everything that had happened to Juntian. There were no more secrets. However, Juntian did not know this yet. After thanking him, he still maintained a respectful attitude and asked Kui Heng, "Exalted Immortal, you seem to be worried that a quasi-immortal emperor would attack?" "Yes." Kui Heng nodded lightly. He glanced at Immortal Monarch Chonghe beside him and smiled. "I'm discussing with someone where to ask for help." "Exalted Immortal, we can cooperate with you." Juntian stood up and said to Kui Heng, "Exalted Immortal, please help me with something. After that, I can resist the incoming quasi-immortal emperors for you." As soon as these words were spoken, Immortal Monarch Chonghe, Fang Jian, Daoist Su, and Hong Fugue were all very surprised. Rest the quasi-immortal emperors? On what basis? The corners of Kui Heng's mouth curled up slightly as he chuckled. You want me to help you fuse with the origin great Taos of this universe? If I do this, I'm afraid the person who will come will not be a quasi-immortal emperor, but a true immortal emperor. When he walked the path of the return to Void Realm, he had already completely grasped the core origin great Tao of this universe. With this as the foundation, he could control the origin great Taos of the entire universe. Without his permission, it was impossible for Jun Tian to use the origin power of this universe to replace the foundation of the power in his body. However, once Jun Tian successfully replaced the foundation of his power, he would directly become a heaven's will that was about to transform the heaven heart mist into heaven heart light. To the primordial world, he would undoubtedly be their number one enemy. Jun Tian did not expect his goal to be seen through. For a moment, he felt a little awkward. However, his expression returned to normal in the blink of an eye. Then, this heaven's will, who was comparable to a top immortal king and had a chance to reach the strength of a quasi-immortal emperor, actually knelt before Kui Heng and exclaimed, "Exalted Immortal has done me a great favor by killing Hao Jun. For the next Prime Val era, I'm willing to follow Exalted Immortal as a servant to repay his kindness. Exalted Immortal, please fulfill my wish." (695) All-knowing, omnipotent, time transcendence, Tao integration eternal. 695 All-knowing, omnipotent, time transcendence, Tao integration eternal. Juantian's decisiveness was really beyond Kui Heng's expectations. Simply put, he'd knelt down too quickly. This was really unexpected. In the beginning, they were still discussing cooperation. But when he saw that his plans had been seen through, Juntian immediately planned to follow Kui Heng as a servant. Moreover, he directly pledged his service for a Prime Val era. In other words, 6 billion years. This was not something an ordinary person could do. You're the will of this universe and the only expert who has condensed the heaven heart mist in 1 billion years. You're actually willing to be my servant? Kui Heng looked at Jun Tian, who was kneeling on the ground, and chuckled. Are you so sure that you can obtain help by following me? If I can't follow you, I definitely won't have a chance to improve, Jun Tian said extremely respectfully. You should know this too. The core origin of this universe is in your control. Whether I can replace the foundation of the origin power in my body or return to the position of heaven's will is up to you. Other than being your servant, I can't think of any other way to improve. Since there's no other way, I naturally don't have to hesitate. Your thoughts are interesting. The smile on Kui Heng's face deepened. He sized up Jun Tian and nodded. In that case, follow me. Get up. Thank you, exalted immortal. Jun Tian was overjoyed and bowed to thank him. Then, he stood up, lowered his head, and stood very respectfully behind Kui Heng. He really looked like an ordinary follower. Such a scene stunned Hong Fugue, Daoist Su, immortal monarch Chonghe, and Fang Jian. They never expected such an outcome. Jun Tian, an expert who had grasped the heaven heart mist and was comparable to a top immortal king, directly expressed his submission just like that. And he was just a servant. It was simply too unbelievable. However, this also showed that Kui Heng's strength had really reached an extremely terrifying height. Even a top immortal king could only bow down to him. Such power was probably equivalent to that of a quasi-immortal emperor. Could it be that as soon as immortal Kui Heng broke through, he had already reached the level of a quasi-immortal emperor? Immortal monarch Chonghe and Fang Jian could not help but guess. But this was too exaggerated. Kui Heng looked at Jun Tian and chuckled. Since you've entered the role so quickly, I'll give you a mission first. Jun Tian immediately nodded and said, Exalted Immortal, please instruct me. Kui Heng said in a low voice, help me collect as much information about the primordial world as possible, especially information about quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. I want to know their realm characteristics and power. Jun Tian bowed and said, yes. At this moment, immortal monarch Chonghe also said, Exalted Immortal, I can do my best to help as well. I can also help investigate the information about the primordial world, as well as the quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. The organization Fang Jian and I are in has been against the primordial world for many years. We've also achieved glorious results and know the primordial world relatively well. Is it the organization you mentioned earlier that has several heaven's wills that has grasped the heaven heart light? Kui Heng asked with interest. What's the name of this organization? Chaos Heaven, Immortal Monarch Chonghe said very solemnly. It's in a place that contains a portion of the Chaos Sea formed by the Supreme God of Earth and the Heaven Heart power left behind by the Supreme God of Heaven. It's named Chaos Heaven. Chaos Heaven. What an impressive name. Kui Heng nodded slightly and smiled. That's good too. If you have any information, feel free to tell me at any time. I'll repay you. Thank you, exalted Immortal. Immortal Monarch Chonghe was overjoyed. He asked Jun Tian and Immortal Monarch Chonghe to investigate the information about the primordial world. It was enough to show how much Kui Heng valued this. In his opinion, the most important thing now was to determine what martial cultivator realm he was equivalent to. Invincible Immortal King? Or quasi-immortal Emperor? After all, Kui Heng had always insisted on not touching those things that were very dangerous to him. This required a clear understanding of the level of his strength. Only after confirming this could he determine how to act next. Fortunately, when I investigated the past of Jun Tian through the River of Time, I already understood the strength of top immortal kings and peak immortal kings. Kui Heng thought to himself, in that case, even if I don't know the exact strength of quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors, I can roughly estimate them. Through his experience with Jun Tian, he had already learned. Ordinary immortal kings were almost equivalent to cultivators who had completely comprehended a core origin great Tao on the path to the return to Void Realm. A top immortal king had almost completely comprehended 3 core origin great Taos and evolved the strength of 480 million fake selves. In short, it was the limit before breaking through to the return to Void Realm. The realm of the peak immortal king realm had completely exceeded the scope of the peak soul formation realm. Even if one reached the end of the quasi-return to Void Realm path, they would not be able to possess such extreme power. It could basically be seen that they had surpassed the quasi-return to Void Realm, but he had yet to reach the early stage return to Void Realm. Unfortunately, in order to avoid being discovered that he had grasped the Heaven Heart Mist, Jun Tian had been trying his best to avoid coming into contact with existences above the peak immortal king realm. Therefore, he did not know much about invincible immortal kings. He only knew that experts who had reached this realm already had the power to directly destroy a universe. Moreover, it was not the collapse of the universe caused by destroying the core origin Great Tao, but the complete destruction of a universe using his own strength. 696 All-Knowing, Omnipotent, Time Transcendence, Tao Integration Eternal, 2. 696 All-Knowing, Omnipotent, Time Transcendence, Tao Integration Eternal, 2. Such strength was really incomparably powerful. In Kui Heng's opinion, this performance meant that perhaps invincible immortal kings already had strength that was not inferior to the early-stage return to Void Realm. As for the quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors, they were definitely stronger existences. He was definitely not their match. Of course, this was only Kui Heng's own speculation. After all, he had yet to obtain accurate information. Whether it was Jun Tian or Immortal Monarch Chonghe, they knew very little about invincible immortal kings, quasi-immortal emperors, and immortal emperors. It was just a one-sided understanding and was not of much reference value. The immortal king who mobilized the power targeted at the origin of stars with the intention of destroying this universe should be a peak immortal king. If only he could descend. Kui Heng thought to himself. Peak immortal kings definitely knew more about invincible immortal kings, quasi-immortal emperors, and immortal emperors. If he could investigate them, it would help him figure out what level his current strength was equivalent to. However, although I can't confirm the level of my strength now, it won't delay me from continuing to become stronger. Kui Heng thought to himself, next, I have to figure out how to cultivate in the return to Void Realm. At the same time, I have to deduce another time-type spell. After stepping into the Return to Void realm, even if he had yet to flip through the high-level immortal technique, he could clearly feel that the cultivation theme of this realm was on the subject of time. Moreover, he had previously heard from immortal monarch Chonghe and the others that immortal emperors had the power to cross space and time. This was clearly a power on the level of time. Not only could deduce another time-type spell increase his cultivation, but it could also effectively prevent possible immortal emperor attacks. Although time-type spells of the same level were no longer effective against him after cultivating the Time Saber, it was inevitable that stronger time-type spells would eventually appear. It was always good to be more prepared. Thinking of this, Kui Heng immediately ordered the system. Exchange for the reading time of the high-grade immortal technique, from initiate to ascension, in the myriad heavens palace in the primordial world. Immortal King Wujue's expression was as dark as water. At this moment, he was still unable to investigate the situation in the universe Kui Heng was in, but his intuition told him that something earth-shattering had definitely happened in this universe. Actually, this was done by Jun Tian. Although Jun Tian had yet to replace his origin power, nor had he truly obtained the position of the heaven's will of this universe, as the original heaven's will of this universe, and having grasped the heaven heart mist, it was still very simple for him to block the prying eyes of the outside world. Immortal King Wujue looked at Cheng Shong at the side and glanced at Cheng Yuan not far away. He asked in a low voice, "What do you think about this matter?" Although Cheng Yuan was a little nervous when he was suddenly called out, his mind was still racing as he hurriedly replied, "Supreme Venerate, could it be that the power of the Heaven Heart Light has appeared in that universe? You mean to say that the Heaven Heart Mist just now has already evolved into Heaven Heart Spirit Light?" Immortal King Wujue's expression immediately became even gloomier. We witnessed the birth of a quasi-immortal emperor. To a heaven's will that had grasped heaven heart power, as long as he could condense the heaven heart light, even if it was only at the most basic level, he could still have strength comparable to a quasi-immortal emperor. No, no. Supreme Venerate, please calm down. That shouldn't be what he meant. Cheng Shong hurriedly came over and explained, he should be trying to say that perhaps a heaven's will who has grasped the power of heaven heart light has taken action and saved this universe, and the heaven's will who has grasped the heaven heart mist. Yes, it's like this. Cheng Yuan hurriedly explained, you saw it just now too. Even I nearly couldn't corrode the strength of that heaven heart mist. I believe it hasn't reached the level where it can evolve into the heaven heart light. If one personally witnessed the process of the heaven heart mist evolving into heaven heart light and did not successfully stop it in the end, they would definitely be punished. Chem, that's true. Immortal King Wujue nodded, taking it that he believed their explanation. He did not want a new heaven's will who had grasped the power of heaven heart light to be born. However, it was impossible for him to sit back and do nothing when such a huge change happened in this universe. After all, if anything really happened to this universe in the future, he would be unable to escape the blame in the end. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Immortal King Wujue looked at Cheng Shong and said in a low voice, "Follow me to the Taiwu Mountain to meet Emperor Wu and explain the situation here clearly. As for how to deal with it, it's up to Emperor Wu." In the primordial world, immortal emperors were addressed as emperor. Whether it was the Myriad Heavens Palace or Wujue Palace, they were actually under the jurisdiction of Emperor Wu of the Taiwu Mountain. Now that they had encountered such an important matter, it was very normal for Immortal King Wujue to choose to report to Emperor Wu and leave it to him to make a decision. Moreover, this was equivalent to using their combined strength to push the matter of this universe to the Taiwu Mountain. In the end, even if something really happened, there would be Emperor Wu blocking in front for them. It was much better than shouldering this matter alone. Cheng Shong naturally understood this principle, but there was only gloom in his heart. He wanted to refuse, but he did not have the guts. After Immortal King Wujue reported this matter to Emperor Wu, although they could have Emperor Wu to share some of the pressure, Emperor Wu would actually have another problem for no reason and would definitely vent his anger on others. This was the goal of Immortal King Wujue. After arriving at Taiwu Mountain, he could just get Cheng Shong to report to Emperor Wu. In this way, even if Emperor Wu would vent his anger on others, the person who would suffer most of the emotional outburst would most likely be Cheng Shong. Immortal King Wuxia only needed to apologize when the time came. After all, Cheng Shong was only a top immortal king, while Immortal King Wuxia was a peak immortal king close to the quasi-immortal emperor realm. Even Emperor Wu could tell who was more important. Of course, this level of anger was not enough to threaten Cheng Shong's life, but his life in the future would most likely not be smooth. When Immortal King Wuxia saw Cheng Shong standing there silently, he immediately frowned and said in a low voice, "Cheng Shong?" "Yes." Cheng Shong immediately bowed and said extremely respectfully, "I'll follow your orders." "That's good." Immortal King Wuxia nodded in satisfaction and smiled. "Let's go, follow me." With that, he walked out of the Myriad Heavens Palace. "Take care of the Myriad Heavens Palace," Cheng Shong instructed Cheng Yuan. Then, he hurriedly followed Immortal King Wuxia out of the Myriad Heavens Palace. He did not know if he could return in one piece after leaving this time. Even if he could return in the end, he would most likely not be able to be the leader of the Myriad Heavens Palace. It was better to entrust the Myriad Heavens Palace to someone else now. Cheng Yuan also understood what Cheng Shong meant, and a strong sense of unease surged in his heart. However, he still bowed in the direction Cheng Shong left and said solemnly, "I won't let Patriarch down." In the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace, Kui Heng held the high-level immortal technique, from initiate to ascension, with a slightly strange expression. Although he had long been prepared for the cultivation method of the return to Void Realm to be relatively strange, he did not expect it to be like this. Refine the immortal soul and return to the void. Only one in the myriad worlds, but everywhere at the same time. Transcend the universe and look upon the river of time, seeing through the past and future. To take another step forward and step into the Tao integration realm, one has to become omniscient and omnipotent. All that had happened in the past, the living beings that existed in the past, the worlds that had existed in the past, and all the things and mysteries that had existed in the past, must become known. Only by understanding the past can one grasp the present. Only by knowing everything and being everywhere can one be omnipotent. Only by being omnipotent can one transcend time and fuse with the Tao for eternity. Such a description made Kui Heng fall into deep thought. Omniscience and omnipotence. Was this the ultimate goal of the return to Void Realm, the prerequisite for Tao integration? "697 No image in the universe, Eon light evasion." 697 No image in the universe, Eon light evasion. Omniscience and omnipotence. The upper limit of the return to Void Realm had indeed exceeded Kui Heng's expectations. This made it even harder for him to imagine what kind of cultivation realm the Tao integration after the return to Void Realm was and what power it had. What kind of cultivation realm was higher than omnipotence? Thinking of this, Kui Heng shook his head gently and suppressed the doubts in his heart. If he relied on his imagination, he could indeed fabricate some concepts, but that was impossible as a true cultivation direction, let alone really cultivate to results. After a while, the surprise in Kui Heng's heart subsided slightly and he began to think about the specific cultivation method. All that had happened in the past, the living beings that existed in the past, the worlds that had existed in the past, and all the things and mysteries that had existed in the past, must become known. This also means that I have to explore all the events and mysteries of the past and try my best to understand the things I don't know. It's somewhat similar to the way nascent soul cultivation explores the unknown, but it's completely different. The things and mysteries I'm supposed to explore in the return to Void Realm are more of the events and mysteries of the past. The main goal should be to allow me to see the past reflected by the river of time more clearly. Kui Heng thought to himself. Although one could spy on the scenes of the past when looking at the river of time at the early stage return to Void Realm, it was very blurry and unclear. Only after having a certain understanding of that past could one accurately locate it and completely understand that history. This was the same situation when he was watching Juantian's past experiences. As for the specific method, it's to first explore the ancient history of the past, then investigate the upper reaches of the river of time according to the ancient history to backtrack and understand the history of the past. It's not necessarily limited to understanding ancient history. I can also investigate the past of some experts. Their lives are long, and they can also be used to backtrack and understand the past. In that case, when I asked Juntian and Chonghe to collect information about the primordial world, it would also contain the basic information of various experts, which suits this method. When they return, I can try to use this as a foundation to investigate the past of the primordial world, or the past of peak immortal kings and invincible immortal kings. In the future, when my cultivation is high enough and my strength is enough, I can also try to investigate the past of those quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. They are all experts who have existed for countless years. I should be able to understand many events and mysteries of the past. However, if the quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors have really touched the mysteries of time, if I rashly pry into it, I might be discovered. It's best if there's a spell to hide myself on the spectrum of time. Thinking of this, Kui Heng decided what kind of spell to deduce next, so he directly ordered the system. Consume 100 points of origin power and use the high-level immortal technique, from initiate to ascension, to deduce spells. The direction of deduction is time concealment. Congratulations! You have used 100 points of origin power to successfully deduce the time concealment spell, Aeon Light Evasion. Aeon Light Evasion. The four directions are called the universe, and the past and present are known as an eon. After cultivating this technique, one can fuse themselves into the eon light and hide in the waves of the river of time. You can hide the past, the present, and the future. No images and traces will be found in the universe, and the eon light can't be traced. The moment the deduction was successful, extremely mysterious scenes appeared in front of Kui Heng. At this moment, he felt that his perception had transcended the universe and he had once again stepped into the river of time. In front of him was an uncertain future, behind him was the past that already existed, and under his feet was the present. However, it was different from the scene he saw when he first looked upon the river of time. This time, not only did he see all the traces of his past, but he also saw the scenes of his future and the many possibilities of his future experiences. At this moment, Kui Heng suddenly sensed something. With a thought, he used the wonderful effect of the Aeon Light Evasion. The river of time suddenly surged with waves. The traces of his existence in the past and the shadows of his future all flickered and fused into the waves. If someone looked at Kui Heng from the perspective of the river of time, they would discover that his current state did not have a past or a future. There was only the present that existed forever. Of course, it was impossible for Kui Heng to not have a past and a future. However, he was in a special state right now after using the spell. This was the mysterious state caused by the Aeon Light Evasion. In this special state, if someone wanted to launch an attack on Kui Heng from the past or the future, their attacks would be interfered with by the layers of waves of time. In the end, the attack would be affected by the illusions and no longer have any power. This way, I'll be much safer. Kui Heng was overjoyed and was very satisfied with the effect of the Aeon Light Evasion. Not only did the Aeon Light Evasion have an extremely powerful time concealment effect, but it also had some additional effects. It could allow him to see the past more clearly and also allow him to see the blurry future. Compared to before, when he purely relied on the power of his cultivation to look at the images reflected in the river of time, the images he saw after using the Aeon Light Evasion were much clearer. Moreover, it was difficult for him to see his own traces in the river of time previously. Now, they could be clearly seen. However, just as Kui Heng began to trace his past, his expression darkened bit by bit. He suddenly frowned and muttered, "Why is this happening?" At this moment, he realized that the beginning of his journey in the river of time was actually in the primitive forest of Daoju Star. If he continued looking, there would be no traces of him. This was obviously unreasonable. (698) No image in the universe, Aeon Light Evasion, 2. 698 No image in the universe, Aeon Light Evasion, 2. Kui Heng knew very well that he was a so-called transmigrator. Before he transmigrated to this world, he was still thinking about his imaginary wife. Normally speaking, his source in the river of time should at least trace back to his life on Earth. But in reality, that was not the case. There were no traces of Earth in the river of time, nor were there any traces of him transmigrating from Earth. Through the river of time, he'd appeared out of thin air in the primitive forest. If he continued looking, there would be no traces related to him. It was as if the 20 years he had lived on Earth did not exist at all. It was as if it had been completely erased without any traces. There was not even a trace of Earth itself. It was the same for the solar system, the Milky Way, and so on. This is probably related to the reason why I transmigrated and obtained the system. Kui Heng thought to himself and temporarily suppressed this doubt. With his current cultivation realm, it was not enough to solve a problem at this level. He had to become stronger step by step. Then, Kui Heng shook his head gently and left the perspective of the river of time, returning to the Grotto Heaven Dao Palace. The most important thing now is to figure out the situation in the primordial world. After immortal monarch Chonghe left the universe where Kui Heng was, he headed straight for the universe with the entrance to Chaos Heaven. Chaos Heaven was an organization with many experts, so it naturally occupied a world that belonged to the organization alone. The name of this world was also Chaos Heaven. In order to facilitate communication between the members of the different universes, they opened several entrance projections that led to the Chaos Heaven in some universes with more members. As long as one entered the projection entrance of the Chaos Heaven, no matter which universe they were in, they could come to the Chaos Heaven. They could also go to a specific universe through the projection entrance of the Chaos Heaven. Immortal monarch Chonghe used this method to quickly arrive at the universe where Master Ju was. Venerable Master Ju was an extremely ancient existence. It was said that he had been born since the creation of the chaos. Now, he had already reached the peak Tai realm and was comparable to an invincible immortal king. He was one of the members of the Chaos Heaven Assembly. The Chaos Heaven Assembly was actually the highest leading organization in the Chaos Heaven. Over the long period of time, the number of members in Chaos Heaven kept increasing, and their authority kept expanding. The scope of their management also became wider and wider. It was inevitable that there would be conflicts of interest between high-level experts. In order to prevent this conflict of interests from turning into a malignant tumor, and in order to unify the interests of many experts, a few experts at the Taisu realm and the Heaven's Wills who had grasped the Heaven Heartlight led the way and established the Chaos Heaven Assembly. In addition, there were 3 layers of structures: Cabinet Member, Dharma Supreme, and Assembly Master. They were respectively occupied by experts at the Tai realm, Taisha realm, and Taisu realm. Their positions were rotated every Prime Val era. Among them, there were the most number of cabinet members, 365 in total. They each represented different universe regions. There were 24 Dharma Supremes, representing the inheritances of large factions, and 1 leader as the Assembly Master. Important matters had to be discussed collectively and approved by most of the cabinet members and Dharma Supremes. Only after a majority decision was made could the final action be taken. There was no need to elaborate on the specific discussion method and voting details. In short, the members of the Assembly were experts who could affect the entire boundless chaos universe. In the universe region they were in charge of, they had incomparably huge authority. Before immortal monarch Chonghe entered the primordial world as a spy, he was actually Venerable Master Ju's subordinate. This time, he was naturally here to look for him. This universe was the one where Venerable Master Ju had stayed the longest in the past 200 million years. This was because he had found a genius disciple here. In just 200 million years, he had cultivated to the grand primordium realm. This was a realm that could be called an ancient king or immortal monarch. In order to teach this disciple, Venerable Master Ju had built a huge palace in the middle of the universe. Every brick was condensed from origin power. It could be said to be extremely luxurious. Every time immortal monarch Chonghe came here, he could not hide the shock and envy in his heart. When the 2 of them arrived, they saw a young man walking out of the palace. He was wearing golden armor and had a long sword at his waist. He looked very valiant. This was Venerable Master Ju's disciple, and his name was Jin Hong. It was said that he was originally a star god born from the golden sun. Hence, after Venerable Master Ju took him in as a disciple, he gave him this name. When Jin Hong saw these 2 old acquaintances coming over, He immediately walked over with a smile and asked with concern, "Chonghe, how's the mysterious expert you wanted to protect earlier?" The last time immortal monarch Chonghe came here, he had brought Fang Jian along and asked Venerable Master Ju to send them to the universe where Kui Heng was. At that time, they still wanted Kui Heng to come over and receive protection to avoid being harmed by the experts of the primordial world. It's a long story. In short, that expert's strength far exceeds our imagination. Immortal monarch Chonghe briefly explained the situation. "I want to see the Venerable Master." "Sure, follow me. Master already knows that you're here." Jin Hong nodded and asked curiously, "How powerful is that person? Could it be that he's already comparable to an ordinary immortal king? Far stronger than that." Immortal monarch Chonghe shook his head. "What?" Jin Hong's eyes widened when he heard this, and he could not hide his shock. Was he a top immortal king if he far exceeded ordinary immortal kings? This was equivalent to the peak of the Taiji realm. Was he that strong? A moment later, immortal monarch Chonghe followed Jin Hong to where Venerable Master Ju was. This ancient expert looked like a kind old man. He was a little fat and his face was relatively round. He had a snow-white beard and wore a loose robe, looking very benevolent. However, his eyes were a little special. He actually had 9 pupils and they looked incomparably deep, as if they contained endless mysteries and connected to countless worlds. He was sitting on a lotus throne. It emitted a faint light, holy and solemn. It was the owner of this palace. "Venerable Master Ju. I've already heard your conversation just now." Venerable Master Ju took the initiative to speak. He looked at immortal monarch Chonghe kindly and asked with a smile, "That person has already surpassed the level of an ordinary immortal king?" "He should have surpassed the peak immortal king realm," immortal monarch Chonghe said solemnly. "My cultivation is low, so I can't understand how powerful that person is. However, I've seen the scene when he displayed his power. All the laws and great Tao of the entire universe were mobilized by him. He gave off the feeling that he ruled the entire universe. I even felt that he was equivalent to a universe." He vividly described the scene of Kui Heng breaking through and added, "By the way, there's also a Heaven's Will who has grasped the power of Heaven Heart Mist." After seeing that person's power, he directly knelt down and submitted, willing to be a servant and follow him for a Prime Val era. A Heaven's Will who has grasped the power of Heaven Heart Mist, isn't that at least equivalent to a top immortal king? He's actually willing to be a servant of the other party for a Prime Val era? Jin Hong stood at the side and couldn't help but say in surprise, "Master, what realm is this person at? He's actually so powerful." Venerable Master Ju also fell into deep thought. After a while, he said, "He's probably at least equivalent to a peak immortal king. He might even be an invincible immortal king. But according to your description, the great Tao and laws of that universe are relatively barren, and the origin power is not rich enough. How can it nurture such a powerful existence? I'm a little curious. Chonghe, bring me to meet him." When immortal monarch Chonghe was meeting with Venerable Master Ju, immortal King Wuxia had already brought Cheng Shong to Taiwu Mountain. (699) Taiwu Mountain, the arrival of an invincible immortal king. 699 Taiwu Mountain, the arrival of an invincible immortal king. The primordial world was vast and endless. It had existed for a long time. After the unbridled expansion that the supreme god of earth did to the land, sea, mountains, rivers, and so on, coupled with the exploration and changes of the world made by humans, and many chaotic calamities, it finally formed the current appearance. In the endless sea, there were 9 extremely huge continents. In the past, there was an immortal ancestor on every continent. But now that there were only 6 immortal ancestors left, 3 geographical regions no longer had immortal ancestors overseeing them. This was the case for the region where the Taiwu Mountain was located. However, although there was no immortal ancestor here, there was an immortal emperor in charge. Of course, in reality, the immortal ancestors had long been living in seclusion and would only appear in times of great tribulation. Therefore, even the regions that had immortal ancestors were managed by the immortal emperors. The overall affairs of a region were determined by the immortal emperor and important decisions were made by him. The specific details of the matters would be handed over to the emperor, which was the various forces established by the quasi-immortal emperors. Taiwu Mountain was such a force. Immortal Emperor Kaisheng authorized Emperor Wu to open the Taiwu Mountain and be in charge of 1/10 of this continent. The Myriad Heavens Palace, Zhuyang Palace, and the Wuxia Palace were all under their jurisdiction. As the actual governing body of this region, Taiwu Mountain was an extremely exalted force and was the central, tallest mountain. One could see Taiwu Mountain anywhere in this region. There was an immortal child welcoming guests at the foot of the mountain. Wuxia was a top immortal king and his name was recorded by the immortal child. Therefore, he was recognized by the immortal child as soon as he arrived. Immortal King Wuxia, are you here to visit Emperor Wu? The immortal child smiled and welcomed him. Although he was called an immortal child, he was actually a Dao Heaven Realm expert who had cultivated for tens of millions of years. Although he was not at the immortal monarch realm, he was equivalent to the 9th Dao realm in the endless universe of the Chaos Sea. He was not weak. However, in the Behemoth faction, Taiwu Mountain, he could only be an immortal child. Yes, I have something to report. Immortal King Wuxia nodded and cupped his hands at the immortal child. His attitude was rather respectful. Immortal child, please go and inform him. Immortal King, just follow me. Recently, Emperor Wu has just come out of seclusion and has nothing to do. The immortal child nodded gently and smiled. Follow me. With that, he turned around and walked towards the stone steps up the mountain. Thank you, immortal child. Immortal King Wuxia hurriedly thanked him and followed behind this immortal child with Cheng Shong. Cheng Shong looked at the back of the immortal child and could not help but feel very envious. This immortal child was only at the Dao Heaven Realm and was not even at the peak of the Dao Heaven Realm, but he could make Immortal King Wuxia praise him so much. As a top immortal king, he could only follow behind like a lackey. It had to be said that sometimes, identity was far more useful than one's cultivation realm. Under the lead of the immortal child, Immortal King Wuxia and Cheng Shong arrived before Emperor Wu. This was a quiet courtyard halfway up the Taiwu Mountain. An old man with white hair and a youthful face was wearing a loose white robe. He was slowly waving his fists and feet under the pine tree, like an old man who was seriously stretching his muscles. In fact, every move this old man made secretly corresponded to the truths of the Great Tao, containing the ultimate mysteries of cultivation. If they could watch for a long time, their cultivation realm would definitely improve greatly. This old man was the Lord of Taiwu Mountain, an expert at the quasi-immortal Emperor realm. Emperor Wu. However, there was no powerful aura on his body, nor was there any pressure. He gave off an indifferent and elegant aura, like those old men who were well read in the mortal world. Wuxia, from the looks of it, you've encountered some difficulties again? Emperor Wu chuckled. He looked very kind and had a benevolent expression. Come, sit down and talk. As he spoke, he walked to the pavilion beside him and sat beside the coffee table inside. Thank you, Emperor Wu. Immortal King Wuxia bowed respectfully before walking towards the pavilion. His attitude was still very humble, and he did not become casual because of Emperor Wu's attitude. This was because in the eyes of Immortal King Wuxia, it was up to Emperor Wu how he treated others. When he faced a quasi-immortal emperor like Emperor Wu, he had to maintain enough respect. After all, it would not be wrong to be more respectful. Cheng Shong followed behind Immortal King Wuxia and followed suit with an incomparably respectful attitude. This was the first time he had seen an existence at the quasi-immortal emperor realm. Usually, he did not even have the qualifications to meet Emperor Wu. Haha, you're still so cautious. Emperor Wu shook his head gently and stopped paying attention to Immortal King Wuxia's attitude. He smiled and said, if you have anything to say, just say it. Emperor Wu, it's like this. Immortal King Wuxia cupped his hands and bowed. He said solemnly, the Myriad Heavens Palace I'm ruling discovered that there's an abnormality in the universe with a fragment soul of an immortal king who was acting as the heaven's will. Cheng Shong, tell him what happened. Yes. Cheng Shong immediately nodded and said respectfully, "Greetings, Emperor Wu. I'm the master of the Myriad Heavens Palace. 1,000 years ago, someone in the Myriad Heavens Palace discovered an anomaly in a universe, but that person was actually a spy who'd infiltrated the primordial world." He briefly explained the entire situation to Emperor Wu. Then, he shut his mouth and retreated to the side. Whether it was Emperor Wu or immortal King Wuxia, they were both powerful existences that could easily kill him. Facing such experts, one had to be humble and respectful enough first. Otherwise, he might really lose his life. Spies. It's fine if it's just a Dao Heaven Realm expert, but there's actually a top immortal king who's a spy. Emperor Wu frowned slightly and looked at immortal King Wuxia at the side. He said in a low voice, "There are some loopholes in your operation." It was indeed a moment of carelessness. "Emperor Wu, please forgive me." Immortal King Wuxia hurriedly bowed. 700 Taiwu Mountain, the arrival of an invincible immortal king. 2. 700 Taiwu Mountain, the arrival of an invincible immortal king. 2. Emperor Wu, the Myriad Heavens Palace is under my supervision. Now that such a thing has happened, I can't absolve myself of the blame. At this moment, Cheng Shong stood up and took the initiative to kowtow and beg for forgiveness. "There's no hurry to admit your punishment." Emperor Wu shook his head gently and waved his hand. "It's not an overly troublesome matter. Since there's a problem with the heaven's will in that universe, we can just send someone over and destroy that universe." He spoke casually, as if he was talking about something very ordinary. It was as if what was about to be destroyed was only an ant nest, not a vast universe with endless living beings and countless planets. "You mean," immortal King Wuxia could not help but ask. "Feng Sheng." The martial emperor suddenly called out a person's name and interrupted immortal King Wuxia. In the next moment, a breeze blew over from the Taiwu Mountain and condensed into a figure in front of Emperor Wu. This was a young man in red clothes with a long saber at his waist. His name was Feng Sheng, and he was an invincible immortal king and one of the disciples of Emperor Wu. However, his temperament was completely different from that of Emperor Wu. He looked fierce, like an incomparably sharp sword that could kill all enemies. Feng Sheng cupped his hands and bowed. He said in a low voice, "Disciple is here." "Master, what instructions do you have?" "Follow Wuxia to the Myriad Heavens Palace," Emperor Wu said to Feng Sheng. "You know the situation just now. Go and destroy that universe." "Yes, Master." Feng Sheng nodded and bowed very solemnly. Since it's a heaven's will that has grasped the power of Heaven Heartmist, it's the most important thing. I'll directly descend into that universe and completely destroy it. "All right." Emperor Wu nodded slightly and smiled. "You're an invincible immortal king. Your body is already comparable to a universe. It's not difficult to destroy a universe, but don't let your guard down. From Cheng Shong's description just now, the will of that universe shouldn't be weak." "Disciple understands," Feng Sheng said in a low voice. "Go," Emperor Wu said. Just as the Taiwu Mountain was planning to destroy the universe Kui Hung was in, immortal monarch Chonghe had already returned with Venerable Master Ju and arrived at the immortal land in the middle of the Silver Disk Star Sea. Venerable Master Ju restrained his aura and hid his aura that was comparable to an invincible immortal king, not causing any reaction from this universe. However, the arrival of such an expert naturally could not be hidden from the heaven's will. Jun Tian, let alone Kui Hang, an early-stage return to Void Cultivator. Therefore, after Venerable Master Ju stepped into the immortal land, Jun Tian revealed his figure and flew over to welcome him. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "This must be Venerable Master Ju of Chaos Heaven. I've heard a lot about you. I'm the heaven's will of this universe. My name is Jun Tian." Chonghe has mentioned fellow Daoist's name before. Venerable Master Ju nodded slightly and smiled. "Fellow Daoist Jun Tian, I wonder if immortal Kui Hung is around now. Can I visit him?" "Yes, Master specifically asked me to come and receive you." Jun Tian nodded and said, "Follow me." With that, he flew towards the palace where Kui Hung was with Venerable Master Ju and Chonghe. While flying in the sky, Venerable Master Ju was also observing this world. His cultivation realm was comparable to an invincible immortal king, and he was extremely powerful. However, when he flew in this world, he actually felt a little instinctively nervous. Is this the aura and pressure of immortal Kui Heng? Venerable Master Ju was secretly shocked in his heart and thought to himself, to have such powerful might, he's probably much stronger than an invincible immortal king. Where did he come from? Ever since he entered this universe, Venerable Master Ju had been observing the great Tao laws of this universe. After coming to this immortal land, he had even seen the great Tao of the origin of life in this universe through the laws of the immortal land. According to his past experience, after combining these great Tao and origins, he came to the conclusion that this universe could at most nurture experts at the Grand Primordium realm. They were equivalent to the peak Tao heaven realm in the primordial world and could be called immortal monarchs. How could such a powerful existence be born? With such doubts in their hearts, Venerable Master Ju and Chonghe arrived in front of Kui Heng's palace under Juantian's lead. Before Juntian could enter to report, the door of the palace slowly opened. A gentle voice came from inside. "Please come in." Venerable Master Ju stopped in his tracks. In his perception, this voice seemed to have descended from an endless height outside the universe. It was very mysterious. "I'm afraid only experts who have transcended the universe and look down on the primordial chaos sea have this kind of aura." Venerable Master Ju was extremely surprised. Could it be that this person has already broken through to the quasi-immortal emperor realm? He could not help but feel even more puzzled. A moment later, Venerable Master Ju and Chonghe arrived at the palace and saw this mysterious expert called Kui Heng. This time, Kui Heng did not deliberately hide his aura, but he was not particularly ostentatious. He only revealed his appearance as an early-stage return to Void Cultivator. However, when Venerable Master Ju saw him, he was still deeply shocked. His eyes were special, and his perception had always surpassed those of the same realm. On Kui Heng, he saw the unique aura of time that belonged to a quasi-immortal emperor and a status that transcended the universe. Quasi-immortal emperor. This was actually a quasi-immortal emperor? But didn't Chonghe say that he broke through in this universe? How did such a simple border universe give birth to an expert of this level? Venerable Master Ju was completely unable to understand and was very shocked in his heart. However, his expression was still the same, and his attitude was much more respectful. He bowed respectfully to Kui Heng and said, "Wei Ju, cabinet member of the Chaos Heaven Assembly, greets Senior." Wei Ju was his real name, but he had been called Venerable Master Ju for too long and his name had long been drowned in the long years. He usually only used this name when introducing himself to his seniors. Immortal Monarch Chonghe, who was standing at the side, was shocked in his heart. He did not expect Venerable Master Ju's attitude towards Kui Heng to be so respectful. He thought to himself, what's going on? Venerable Master Ju's attitude has changed. Could it be? Could immortal Kui Heng be a quasi-immortal emperor? After all, Venerable Master Ju was already in existence comparable to an invincible immortal king. Only a quasi-immortal emperor could make him behave so respectfully. He couldn't be an immortal emperor, right? This was too exaggerated. There's no need to be so polite. Kui Heng waved his hand gently and smiled. "Since you're here, you must already know my goal. Shall we get straight to the point? Senior wants to know more about the primordial world, right?" Venerable Master Ju planned to confirm again. "It's not just the primordial world. It's best if I can understand the situation of the Chaos Heaven as well." Kui Heng smiled and said, "You can decide if you want to explain the information about Chaos Heaven. Of course, it would be extremely good if you could tell me about your past experiences." "Yes, I understand." Venerable Master Ju nodded, but he felt even more curious in his heart. He still could not figure out what immortal Kui Heng wanted to do. However, at this moment, he suddenly sensed something and turned to look outside. He could not help but exclaim, "Senior, something seems to have happened." "Oh." Kui Heng nodded slightly and was unhurried. The corners of his mouth even curled up slightly as he smiled and said, An invincible immortal king forcefully entered this universe, causing the entire universe to tremble. Follow me to take a look. Feng Sheng had always been swift and decisive. After arriving at the Myriad Heavens Palace, he immediately found the spatial coordinates of the universe Kui Heng was in and descended. An invincible immortal king's body was comparable to a large universe. When he suddenly entered such a desolate universe, it immediately triggered a violent resistance from the laws of the universe. For a moment, the entire universe shook. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,